Debate, live and after show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout of thanks and appreciation to Effie Patriot, Steve on the level, Thomas van der Zander, Cannabear, Gary Hughes, Measured Flat, Chris Wouters, Amish Battlemirth, Sensual Goat, Mitch Kennedy, Rod, the name's Burley, Twadwazzle, Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, Flat Earth Travolta, JMels24, Unimento, Iron26, Endless, Golden McKiernan, Retro Bill, Level Playing Poem, Michael Kahn, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Mel B. Styles, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Rob W, Dale West Watson, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Texas Mike, Chow Young Cat, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So a massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. If you would like to join the discussion, be sure to mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by Sensual Goat, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in the Flat Earth Debate Discord server, so welcome one and all.
Hello.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon. It's good to have you all. And we're going to do about housekeeping questions. If you're one of my members, you'll be aware that we've released a couple of videos over the last 24 hours where we cover various flat earthers that, while it's kind of fun to take the mickey out of them when they postulate spurious nonsense, it is also simultaneously kind of a shame that people don't know the arguments that we put forth here. Now, we can wallow in self-pity and moan about how our counterparts tell people that we're scammers and so forth, but in reality, all we can do is promote the arguments that we constantly promote and encourage the people who do watch the show to share it with others. Now, the recent shows have had lots and lots of positive comments in terms of the type of information that we're discussing, and expansions on things like yesterday's was areas of equal elevation and parallel plane, parallel sky, when using angles to the stars for celestial navigation. And it's nice to read those comments, but it is still, notwithstanding Adam specifically in his comments yesterday about how disappointing it is to see our smaller counterparts not knowing these arguments. And an echo of that is actually the final experiment / fraud, which is to say that the people who would buy into that don't know that it's flat. Now, while we were discussing this yesterday, as I say, check it out if you're a member. If not, I might release this. We might have got this if I didn't manage to get it live in time. It might have been what I release now, but unfortunately not. It's going to be members only for the now. But we were discussing this about Creaky Blinder and saying, well, the fact that he's prepared to buy into this, affirming the consequent false dichotomy, and suggest that it is the arbiter of truth, can only suggest that the same is true of our counterparts. They don't know it's a globe either, which was interesting. Any comments before we do a bit of housekeeping? Oh, well, you chatty bunch. So glad we've got housekeeping questions to keep this going. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge? That's a horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature.
Negative.
Oh, you're willing to answer housekeeping questions. Any
I'm
evidence?
waiting for
Not
gas
since
pressure
pretty great day,
containment.
1st of
I
January.
know, we're four
2020
people at
with
once.
the
That's
black
ideal. Go on, Neil.
I'm waiting for gas pressure containment.
Go on, George.
Proof of curvature, not since the 1st of January 2020 with the black swan, which proves the Earth is not a sphere and the horizon is not the leading edge of a sphere either. So not physical and not a sphere.
Yeah, we still have Muppets out there that tell us as a rebuttal in their mind refraction. Like, they don't appreciate after nearly 5 years that stating refraction is the undoing of their own argument and their own position that the horizon's a physical hill getting in the way of stuff called Earth curve. I mean, it is slightly bewildering as to how long it has actually taken people to recognise the issue with their own argument. But there we go, 5 years almost in, and they still don't get it, and they still bat refraction at us like it's actually a rebuttal. Who's making that
Well,
noise?
that's not an experiment, Nathan.
Hold on, Neil. Go ahead, Apocryphon.
I was going to say we can't say it enough to these people to educate them. Like, there are no horizontal lines on the surface of a sphere, and the only way to have this optical, viewing, if you will, or observation would be you would have to cut into the sphere to create the plane to give you that circle around you, but what would be called now the horizon, because it's a horizontal line. I mean, we can't say it enough to them.
Yeah, you're kind of describing the equatorial plane. I mean, the extrapolation of a globe wrapped around the equatorial plane, obviously, as I've just stated, has its origins with the flat plane. The globe comes afterwards. But to conceptualize it from outside in, I suppose you could describe it as the horizon wrapped around you inside a ball. It's the way of taking it. It's like you've back engineered it to the flat plane, but it's the other way around. It starts with the flat plane.
Right, and it's pretty cool too.
Hello, Neil.
It's pretty cool too when you look into it, as hopefully Globers, hopefully they do, and then they'll realize, because they like to say, oh, you can see it curving to the left and right, and all you have to tell them, just, okay, take that photo, right, and then just turn a little bit right or a little bit left, and you'll see that curve turn into a straight line horizon again. It's just the way the lens and our eyes are capturing these things. And so it does kind of look, that's why we say it's like a circle around you. Again, if you put blinders on and just took a bunch of individual snaps and then scroll through them, you'll see straight, 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 straight. It's just an optical phenomenon. I like doing that with them.
Fair enough. I hate it because it's not my claim. I don't have any interest in the horizon particularly. The fact that I spent a couple of years learning about it, big shout out to my Patreon Life is Short. But by the same token, I don't need it. I don't need the information. It's only been learned because there's a positive claim from our opponent's side that the horizon is Earth curve. It might be a folly that some people in our community endeavoured to investigate if they hadn't become flat earthers. But for the fact that they were told that it's Earth curve, I doubt there'd be a very, very small number of people that were interested in the optical dissolution point we call the horizon. Why would it serve any interest to anybody? Oh, it's because they say boats go over it and it's a physical hill. Yeah, well, once you debunk that, Black Swan 2020, that's it now. My interest in the horizon literally disappeared with the Black Swan. I don't care anymore. I mean, I can explain to you how perspective works. And it's nice to know that information to draw a very firm line under it when people put it to me. But by the same token, it isn't of interest to us. We don't have a positive claim about this. Unless you're going to suggest that perspective, which, yes, it's got its place in how the process of celestial navigation has been developed and what it represents. You can use those words in those descriptions. But fundamentally, you're talking about angles off a flat Earth as opposed to perspective with the horizon. You're using the horizon for what it represents as the ground to establish horizontal. So again, the interest in the horizon beyond that is so limited. I don't have any interest in it if I'm ruthlessly honest. But yet, flat earthers spend a significant amount of time, me included, learning about perspective simply because our opponents have a positive claim about it. I'm not saying that learning the Black Swan means you shouldn't learn the effects of perspective and know what they are actually claiming as Earth curve, but you don't need to.
Can I speak?
Yeah, you can now.
They're claiming victory with these this the two imaginary lines that they're claiming. They're saying there's no lines at all, but we're not saying they're lines either. We're just saying that that horizontal plane of reference we're standing on is the Earth, and it's flat. So I don't know what's going on with these globers.
Well, they need to measure a flat Earth too. They've got their own pain, Neil. Like I
It's
say,
worse than that, Neil.
Go ahead, George.
Because spheres, they don't have horizontal planes. That's the problem.
Yeah, number
It's
one,
not just a
spheres.
horizontal line, it's a horizontal plane. In all the vectors are horizontal.
Yeah, they've got big problems. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container?
Okay, my son was freaking out in the car yesterday. I had the show on, and we were talking about gas pressure without containment. And he's saying, we're not saying there's no containment. Sort of like the universe, like we don't know how big it is, and nobody's saying that there's not containment.
Yeah, they are. They're saying that there's no containment for the gas pressure that we're breathing. It just dissipates into a vacuum, is what they suggest, which is a straight-up second law of thermodynamics violation. There is no containment around Earth. The rockets...
That's what I said to him. There's a vacuum. In the heliocentric claim, you have a vacuum. And that can't be.
When it gets to these things...
Uncontained vacuum.
Well, you have to discipline them in their own belief, right? What happens when people come here and say, I'm not claiming the sky's a vacuum? Well, good for you. The globe is. So we don't really care what you claim. There's a worldview that's perpetuated of a vacuum in the sky that rockets go through. And between the gas pressure we're breathing and that journey that rockets claim to take, there is no containment, which is a straight-up violation of entropy law. Gas fills space. If the area above our head they claim to put rockets in was an empty space, the high-pressure gas would fill it. It's a law of nature. Saying, oh, well, I'm not saying the containment isn't, 20 million miles away. Well, that's fascinating. It's still a straight-up second law of thermodynamics violation to suggest that the high-pressure gas we breathe dissipates into 10 to the minus 17 torr, with a containment around all of it. No.
Yeah, it's fun to ask them, show us a gas ball in a vacuum chamber in a classroom setting. That doesn't click. Nothing's clicking in their brain, like to realize can't have that. There's just no. And then, okay, so if gravity is supposed to be holding the gas, fighting the vacuum of space, which would be the violation because energy obviously disperses, fills the space. Well, then once you turn on that vacuum, then voila, gravity can't help anything in there. Water will boil and evaporate and just escape. It's just interesting their conversation or their discussions. Just not clicking for them. It's really weird.
Well, the description is kind of a bit janky because when you describe existing gas pressure that we're all breathing filling their claim to be sky vacuum, while that's true, the reality is such that in their claim to be world of sky vacuums and ball earths, we'd have never developed pressure in the first place. So the gas would come out the ground and never press on anything. Therefore, it would just dissipate into the volume. So in other words, the first thing you must have to achieve gas pressure in the first place, yeah, before you can say that gas pressure that has been achieved would fill the vacuum. It's like, well, how did you achieve the gas pressure in the first place? Well, you must have containment. Earth is under containment for us to be breathing high-pressure gas. It is as simple as that. Now, any example that starts with that high-pressure gas must have a concession from the person that's utilising that high-pressure gas of the containment that is required to achieve it. So there's no hypothetical example where, yes, we're already existing pressure, and there's a sky vacuum with gas not filling it. First, you must have containment, then you get gas pressure. Without the containment, there is no pressure. To describe filling a sky vacuum, you'd have never achieved the pressure in the first place. To have my description of, well, the gas we're breathing would fill the space, if what the sky is, and I don't know what it is, was suddenly a vacuum, Well, the whole hypothetically suddenly a vacuum would mean that the containment we must be under suddenly vanished, and vanished to reveal the high-pressure gas to a vacuum that was already existent behind the containment in this hypothetical example. So from that point of view, it's a janky example. In reality, the statement should be, if it is claimed that the sky was a vacuum, past tense, we would have never achieved gas pressure because there'd be no containment for the gas to press upon.
Very true. Oh, go ahead, George.
The same applies to the vacuum. The vacuum itself, yeah, you cannot have just a vacuum without a chamber. We all seen in school vacuum chambers. In this case, there's a claim of a sky vacuum without a chamber. Same thing as gas pressure without the chamber, without the container. Can't have it.
It being the antecedent is pretty self-evident that you can't have that vacuum in a classroom setting, which is also another container, by the way, of sorts.
Speaking of jank, got quite janky internet at the moment, and it should be exceptional because it's fully fiber optic, very, very high-speed internet. It costs a shed ton of money, and it's just been janky because the crappy old router. It's not old, it's just old technology. So I phoned up to complain and potentially say, what do I need to do to cancel and go to someone else who's got a much better offer? And they instead talked me into having a much better, more up-to-date router and paying for gigabit internet and paying more money to someone I'd called cancellations. Man, they're good. Customer service people that are well trained can get more money out of you when you're on the phone fuming with them. So that's what happened with me. That's why there's no pre-show, just in case everyone was wondering. I was on the phone to the internet provider, onto their cancellations department, then onto India, then onto technicians, then back onto India, then back onto an English person that was prepared to give me a price that I was willing to pay that was more than I already was. But whether or not it makes the slightest bit of difference to the reliability of this show, because I tend to find that it's actually very reliable. You might find glitches at my end that you don't know about, but typically when I go back like I did yesterday and checked the show, because I'm like, oh, is that going to cause an error? Is that going to cause issues with the show? Does it mean that the show hasn't gone out properly? And surprisingly, it actually was perfect as far as I could tell. So while I'm seeing issues at my end, it's not actually the case that it's drastically affecting the show. So I don't know if that's a testament to OBS, YouTube, or what. But yeah, I'm just pleased that everyone's getting these shows. But hopefully an upgrade is on its way in the next couple of days, and I'll be improving my already stupidly fast speeds that I don't need to be any faster. I just need the thing to be a bit more reliable. So there we go. Just wanted to get it off my chest because I've literally just done it before the intro. I didn't want it to be the first thing I launched into, though, because literally I put the phone down and started setting up the show, and then by the time I'd got all the different Hangouts opened and the link sent, I was 2 minutes late. And then it's like, all right, I better do a live and Patreon shout out all at the same time, which I've never done before. Hopefully it sounded okay. 92 people watching, so you're obviously enjoying the show. Nobody can tell any different. Happy days. Do we want to cover Joe Rogan today? I'm quite into just having a chit chat. Oh, Brian's here. He'll probably want to do something like that. At the moment,
Now the show could start. Brian's here.
Well, because Brian should hear the live show can start.
You may begin.
That's my line.
Hey everyone. Hey Chocolate, good to see you.
I haven't heard a single thing from Chocolate, and he still hasn't said hello to you.
He's probably busy doing what he's doing. At least he's on the show.
He was on one of the members' stream that we did the other day.
All right, so I'm wrong then.
Yeah, I thought that's what I'd have to publish today, to be honest, if I was kept on the phone any longer. So I thought this is going to turn into a day-long job changing internet suppliers. All I wanted was a new hub. I'm like, I just want a new hub. This one's crap. And they end up getting more money out of me. Bastards.
Nothing's for free. Literally not.
Yeah, but I'm like, it doesn't work. And I'm sure maybe this got to a live show. Maybe it's been on one of the members' streams. I don't know. Either way, I'm moaning to my wife about the internet, and then ding dong. Well, what's that? Somebody at the door. Unexpected guests. Open the door. Virgin Media technician. Can I come in and check all of your wires? I'm like, this sounds like a scam. ID, come on. And he's got a van. He's definitely a Virgin Media. I'm like, okay, fine. He says, I'm just going to go get my tools and I'm just going to check all your connections. I'm like, isn't that weird? Like, I'm moaning how crap the internet is, and then unexpectedly, some engineer just turns up without me arranging for him to be there. And he says, did you have a dropout in your line? I'm like, yeah. And he says, that was me. I was checking it. Something wrong in your connection. So he comes, he checks everything. I explain how crap the service is. And he tells me, get this number router or hub or whatever it was, hub number 5. So I write it down. I'm like, fine. Phone customer services. I want a hub number 5, according to this engineer, to stop my system being garbage and having to be reset every 2 or 3 days. And they're like, no, you can only have that if you're on gigabit internet. More money, please. I'm like, so the only way to solve this problem is to upgrade. I'm like, I don't want it faster. Just give it me on the same speed with a better hub. No, we can't do that. We've got to get you up. I'm like, what a load of nonsense. You can do whatever you like. You mean it's packaged together for you to sell me a more expensive package? That's what you mean.
You can only have the second shoe if you upgrade to the shoe package.
Exactly. I need both shoes. They're not functional with one. Yeah, but we can give you the other one while your first one's back in for repair. No, that's still no use. Well, you can upgrade to the 2-shoe package. No, I want both shoes now at the same time.
You let people in because you've seen a van. Boy, you're right for home invasion.
No,
the
I saw a van
alone does not prove it.
I saw a van and ID, and when he said, did your internet connection drop about 3 minutes ago? And I said, yes. He went, yeah, that was me at the box, just making sure that it was this number house that was causing the issue.
Did he have any tattoos on his face?
No, he didn't. He seemed perfectly legit, to the point where I happily let him in with children running around. No, I had no suspicion whatsoever. He was very pleasant and very nice, and he did his job efficiently. And he didn't break any of my equipment as he was sneaking around it. So I couldn't be more happy with the engineer. And he turned up like an angel while I'm moaning. This Wi-Fi's rubbish, ravatory, ding dong. Who's that? Like, you couldn't make it up. Like, they telepathically knew I needed an engineer.
I'm a little bit suspicious of it now, to be honest with you.
What, like he's intentionally like Wile E. Coyote trimming my fibre optic cable?
Can you verify he works for Virgin?
I didn't phone up and verify his ID, no. I could have taken it that one step further if I had the slightest inkling that there was something dodgy going on. But immediately he alleviated all concerns like a good con man would.
Brian, he had a van, and the power went out at that time, so he's legit.
Could be an Agent Smith.
Oh my God. Anyway, let's put it this way. If it was an Agent Smith, their only objective was to get an extra tenner a month out of me, which they dutifully did get. So well done, Agent Smith. You got your tenner. Anyway, shout out to Duncan McLeod. He says, calling them a nest of vipers is an insult to vipers. Who are we calling a nest of vipers?
The Polaris.
The Ballers?
Well, that's the most obvious choice. I don't know what I'm calling it. That's the voice.
Is that who you're talking about? Let us know. You don't have to super chat to let me know, Duncan. Just tell me. Are you talking about Ballers? I don't know, man. So it depends on what day it is. Sometimes I feel like I should have a lot of empathy for these people because they're in a lot of pain.
Some of them, yes. I would say there's a few. They're in a minority now that would deserve empathy, but the majority of them don't, because they switch. You turn the tables, and you see how much they have for you. They would have none. Majority of them.
That doesn't matter. Yeah, I don't know.
Empathy.
I don't have my standards that skewed that I should say. People have put that standard to me recently, right? I tell you that this is interesting. Doing OMI means that I'm on camera, and recently there was a zealot baller who chanted at me. Now, while I sat there, I literally, it felt no different to when I sit here and do the exact same thing in debate. It didn't feel any different. But the reaction from the audience was totally different. They had 100% empathy for me and told me how tolerant I was. Now, in some ways, I was equally, if not slightly more abusive in response than I would be to your average skank and file globe believer in this server when they come and start chanting 5 times through the top of us. Yeah? In many ways, I feel my response when it gets escalated is more justified, even though it's actually, in this platform, more tempered. In that case, with this guy who's just chanting at me, it's no different. I start having a go back after a time, maybe 10 minutes of verbal abuse from him, and start telling him, no, that's because you're thick. Which, if I wasn't on camera, the comments would have been totally different. It would have been, oh, you're abusive to him. You just called him stupid. You were ad-homing him. That's what I'd have got if I wasn't on camera. But because I was, people empathised with me and it told me I was tolerant. I'm like, this is no different to what happens in FED. But yeah, because I'm on camera, suddenly I'm the one getting the sympathy.
Sorry for interrupting.
That's okay.
I actually did watch it. I don't watch your METV videos, but that was a 25-minute video that I did watch because of the title. And the difference is that guy wasn't making any argument. Whereas the people that you would normally deal with, they give the impression of making an argument. And that's, even though, and maybe if you're all both on camera, it might change things a little bit. But when they're given the impression that they're making an argument to the untrained, then people feel that you're being unfair. When you know they're not making an argument, you know they're just avoiding facts and truths, just facts of nature and and geometry, and you know this. So when you lose your temper with them, you're called the tyrant. Whereas the guy you were dealing with on OMETV, he didn't make any argument about anything. He was just abusing you, right? Whereas
he said the flower of life. He said the flower of life proves the globe.
That's the rebuttal guy that didn't know what rebuttal meant. Oh, yes. Yeah, that guy was.
Yeah, I started laughing when he said that because the flower of life would be two-dimensional, wouldn't it?
Yes.
As in, if he had to draw it, it would be 2 dimensions.
Yes.
Right? Whatever what is the flower of life? What has that got to do with anything?
Yeah, but the reason I'm bringing that up is I'm saying,
I know what it has to do with.
I'm agreeing with you. Well, you're saying because the ballers to the untrained ear offer some semblance of what seems to be a response, and then repeated, that seems like it's unreasonable, even if it's on the 9th attempt of them obfuscating the actual argument. When I cut them down, you're cutting him down unreasonable. He's put an argument to you. What, 9 times that's been responded to, 9 times has been ignored, 9 times chanted through, 6 times. That's what you think is unreasonable to be interrupted. Yes, this guy didn't have the wherewithals to put what seemed like a response 9 times. He only had the flower of life. So therefore you're saying it seems unreasonable when somebody doesn't have even the semblance of an argument that your average skank and file baller does. Therefore, when they do have a semblance of argument, it's perfectly reasonable to say, no, you're unjustified for behaving in exactly the same way. Yes, Nathan. Well, that's good to know. I just thought it was because I was on camera. Brian.
Good morning.
Sorry, Nathan.
That's all right. Hey, Chocolate.
Hey, Chocolate. Sorry, Nathan. I was my hands were wet. I couldn't get to the phone. No,
that's all right.
It's just a case of if that guy put any argument to you that seemed like an argument to the untrained, then they'd be complaining that you weren't tolerant enough. But because he basically gave you the same as those who are more educated than him would give you as an opposition argument, but because he wasn't educated enough to give you that little bit of an argument, or what would seem like an argument to the untrained, then he was being unreasonable. But if he could come up with some heap of nonsense that doesn't have anything to do with reality and just fool the masses, then you'd be the bad guy.
Right. So what you're saying is
they can't tell the good from the bad. Go on.
So let's say he said exactly the same, but at some point he paused and went, refraction. Paused again and then carried on saying the exact same words. If he'd have just done that little bit of insertion of something that resonated with the people watching on the globe side, obviously, anti-flat earth side, that would have meant that I would have been deemed unreasonable, because at that point he's got a semblance of what seems like a reasonable argument to our opponents. Therefore, you kept shutting him down. He said refraction. You didn't even address it.
Yeah. Or gravity or whatever other rubbish they want to come up with. You know?
Everyone agree with Brian on this? So long as they
Check.
seem to have an argument, I would be the one deemed unreasonable, reacting the same way each time.
Go on, Chocolate's trying to say something, I think, Nathan.
Oh, sorry, Chocolate.
Let's say mic check. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Thanks.
Is that it then? That's it. That just seeming to have an argument is enough to get away with rumpusing the living daylights out of you and ignoring and obfuscating every point. And if your opponent attempts to point that out to you, you'll be the one deemed unreasonable.
It is for the masses of the audience who are drawn in emotionally. They don't think logically. They're thinking with their emotions. That Nathan is shouting down someone again, not realizing that the person that Nathan is claiming to be shouting down is trying to urinate down their back and call it rain, right? They don't realize that. So they go backing up and supporting that person, just like they'll support some politician or some celebrity, where without just purely emotional response, without any logical thought involved. Same exact thing. Do you know what I mean? When you're saying the wrong thing according to the masses because it doesn't fit their emotional response, straight away you're the bad guy. You know, which is why, right? When Mark Twain said it's easier to fool people than to show them they've been fooled. That's what it comes down to. You're the bad guy when you're trying to point out you're being fooled. It's the people fooling them are the good guys in their heads because they're being fooled by these people. They don't know who the good and bad are. That's the problem. They don't know what a good or bad, what the good guys and the bad guys are. They don't know the difference.
Yeah, like the girls serving you free drinks at the casino. Casino likes me. Fair enough.
I just posted something in Master B, Nathan. It's an argument I've been having for quite some time now with some of the bowlers. According with this guy Jim Clark, can see Polaris 1 degree south of the equator. If conditions are just right, you can observe Polaris 1 degree south of the equator. If that's the case, if that's true, this is my point here. That elevation angle to Polaris 1 degree south of the equator, that radius value would be greater than the radius of Earth, because it's beyond the limitations of Earth, if the conditions are right, because it's a larger circle. From south of the equator, the circle should be smaller and not larger according with the globe. But according with this bowler here, is saying that 1 degree south, 1 degree south is what, 60 nautical miles beyond the equator? That's a large circle.
Yeah, this kind of came up yesterday. I don't think I'd have made this conclusion at the time, but you've got a scale in terms of angular relationships with nautical miles, and it's fixed. So when someone was suggesting, well, I can't remember who was asking. Somebody was asking if the sun reaches the point where we've got what they describe as the sun mirage, does that mean you've got an equal elevation circle that's greater in circumferential value? Well, no. You've only got a fixed scale based on the angle, and each angle is going to be made up of 60 nautical miles no matter what you do. So that scale is how the entire system's been built and how you will utilize it if you're going to be navigating with it. So it's not like you can... I think it was Brian. My God, my memory's terrible. I think Brian yesterday was saying, no, here's the maximum value. Was it you?
Well, if you're talking
from the show of yesterday.
Yeah, on the show yesterday.
Yeah, I heard that part. That's why I'm bringing it up today. Because if you're navigating during the day, you use the sun as a reference. So even, let's imagine you are in the south, in the furthest point south, Antarctica, yeah? Observing the sun and doing elevation angle to the sun. Your circle of equal altitude will go from you in the south all the way north and back again south again. That's a circle of equal altitude, meaning that the ground position of the sun, even though is at the equator line, yeah, your circle of equal altitude goes around the ground position of the sun all the way north and back south again, contradicting that you will have circles of equal altitude just in the north and circles of equal altitude just in the south. Ha, ha, ha. How do you explain you don't see Polaris from the south? How do you explain you don't see the Southern Cross from the north. Meanwhile, we have the sun used for navigation during the day and circles of equal altitude to the sun, regardless which part you are, in the north or in the south. Your circle is around the ground position of the sun at that moment in time. So proving the Earth is flat. Not a gradient. I'm not saying it's a largest radius. No. For the sun, no. 1 degree south of the equator, observing Polaris, yes, but not in this case of the sun. So
Yeah, but
Bill brought up the argument, but he didn't explain properly.
Go on,
yeah, but
Brian.
I don't understand the point, George. What's the point? You can see the sun from north and south. I don't see what the point is.
You have a circle of equal altitude going from the north all the way south and back again. Is a circle around what
Crossing the
they call
equator.
the equator.
Yeah, but that's
Sorry?
not. I mean, what's the big deal with that? I'm not understanding the point.
There isn't, from George's point of view, there isn't a big deal.
It's just a circle of equal altitude around the sun, from the north to south and back again.
Explain the
Not on
ball
the
as
sphere. It can't
Sorry,
be happening.
George. Just explain to Brian the position of your opponent so he understands the point of this.
The ballers will claim the same
Not
thing.
you,
They just be
Brian.
trying to place that
Not
circle.
you.
Oh, sorry.
I'm asking George to explain it to you.
Right. The point of the ballers is we use Polaris for navigation until we reach the equator. Then Polaris is not visible anymore. So how do you prove from that moment on that is still flat? Well, the answer is the sun, isn't it? Because we use the sun for navigation throughout the day. You can have 3 different positions, readings of the sun's elevation to find your position on the ground during the day. If you're doing that in the south or in the north, it doesn't matter because your circle of equal altitude, if you actually draw the circle and not the partial circle, if you do the whole circle, the circle goes from the north, where your position, where you are, all around. So south and back to you again. You need to close the circle. Meaning that at the equator, well, between northern and southern equator needs to be a horizontal plane of reference because you're having a circle of equal elevation.
Yeah, but look, they try and place a circle. Now, they can't do it because it becomes a spherical cap. But to try and place a circle onto a globe, make it into a spherical cap, and changes the actual size of the circle. That's what they try and do mathematically. But the whole thing about Polaris being seen past the equator, I mean, the claim that you can see it 69 statute miles past the equator is based around their claim that there is such a thing as they claim that there is celestial refraction, which there isn't. What that is that when you see Polaris, it can't go into the horizon. The horizon is not a geometric location, so it can't go behind something that isn't geometric. It can't go behind something, right, that is only optical. So when you see it appearing to touch the horizon, that's purely optical. Now, on a more clear day, you might be able to see it past 60, 70, 80 miles past what would be the equator line, simply because of clarity of view, the weather, all this other stuff. That might be the only reason you could see it past that point. That's why it doesn't appear to be at zero at the equator for sometimes, maybe. That's you know what I mean? It's purely optical. Everything that comes from them is involving a physical thing, like not physical, but a tangible thing, which what they think Polaris is, going down behind a globe's geometric edge. Every single thing they do concerning Polaris is that. And that would require the horizon to be geometric because we can't get latitude via Polaris with a claimed constantly refracted horizon. So anything, see, this is the problem. When you're arguing with them, you have to stop them and don't end up going into the nitty-gritty of nonsense with them, because then before you know it, you're actually inside in their BS paradigm. Right? They've got to prove that they can get latitude with their claimed refracted horizon. Right? Get correct latitude. If they can't do that, which they can't, the argument is over. I don't see why we even need to go into this. Maybe I'm wrong, George, I don't know. But for me, it seems to be nonsense for no reason.
I get you. I'm just working out on their paradigm. Yeah, working on their paradigm. These are the claims. Yeah, you can still observe the sun. You don't know where the sun is. You go to your almanac. You know the position of the sun at that time of the day.
We got this.
You can do this regardless.
Sorry to stop you, George.
Regardless if you're in the north or south. Go ahead.
We've got it twice now, but just one thing to add to that, because you sort of transitioned from describing the latitude system for navigation. No. When you're describing the latitude system specifically with the north, with reference to Polaris, that's what creates the grid. Now, we can go into the distortions of the southern grid, but that's separate to what you described, because you described navigating. And then you said, well, in the south we can use the sun. Well, no. In the south you can use the stars the same as you do in the north. Some of the stars will overlap. That is to say that you'll use stars that are also referenced in the north. But it's only Polaris that reaches and breaches the horizon at a certain point. Well, that doesn't mean that when the star known as Polaris is 10 degrees above the horizon, that you'd pick that to use even if you were on the equator or further south. There's plenty of navigation stars.
I'm not talking about latitude, legend.
Do you see what I'm saying? You can still pick out 3 navigation stars. Yeah. The system doesn't change. Now, the maps change.
And the sun can be one of them, no?
Yeah. I'm notwithstanding what you've already said, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying that it sounds weird when you go, well, okay, well, we've got this Polaris-based system in the north. Yeah, for the latitude grid. Now, if you go to some of Brian's presentations in terms of the distortions of the maps based on what we use and reference, which is time, well, you can see the distortions. Now, we don't have to explain them. They're on our maps. So, we understand that there are distortions in the south, but we still use the southern stars to navigate and get a fix. Just because you've no longer got access to one star, that's Polaris, when you're navigating, doesn't alter that you can still navigate. Now, you could argue that when you're using charts and maps for the south, that you get errors. That's true also. I've got plenty of first-hand testimony. Martin Leitker, one of the first things we discussed was when he was in the Merchant Navy, and they had errors in terms of their distances when they were travelling south. They knew hull speed, they knew how many knots they could do, therefore they knew how long it would take. And when it took longer, they're all scratching their heads. Likewise, it was shorter in parts of the north, but we won't get into that. The point is that where they can place their point on the map to say this is where I am, and therefore find their way home successfully, which is how we expanded the territory, is absolutely still possible beyond the view of Polaris. Polaris isn't the arbiter of all navigation. It's the reference for the northern grid. That's all it is. It doesn't alter how you'd navigate if you're beyond the equator. You still use the stars. You still triangulate off a flat plane. Not triangulate. You still use celestial navigation with respect to a flat plane with the stars. Just different stars. Not the northern ones. Some of them you might have an overlap and still use the northern stars and the southern stars.
Yes, I'm not saying to use the sun as latitude. That's not what I mean.
No, I'm not either.
I don't think we're fully getting George's
latitude
point,
in the north with one you can your latitude with one single reading. If you want to find your position, you'll need more than one. But what we're talking about, when I'm talking about the sun, is in terms of navigation. Regardless if you're in the north or in the south, you are lost at sea, you don't know exactly where you are. You do 3 readings to the sun. And if you are in the north, your circle of equal altitude will go all the way to south and back again north. You do that 3 times, you have 3 circles of equal altitude. You pinpoint your position. Now, you can do this either in the north or in the south. This means that we are using a celestial that is over the equator, and you can do this in the north or in the south to pinpoint your position.
Yes.
I'm not using as latitude.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting you do.
That doesn't...
The only reason I was suggesting that it doesn't necessarily need a juxtaposition between the Polaris-based system of latitude and when you go south, suddenly it's, well, we will use the sun. No, you can still prove flat Earth with any star and any navigation structure that's used in south or north. It's only the Polaris-based grid that changes.
Yeah, but what George is saying is that if you try to correct me if I'm wrong, George. Let's just say you're taking an angle to the sun and you're 45 degrees or south, right? And your angle to the sun at whatever time of year is 52 degrees, right? And someone in the right, that means that you have a circle of equal altitude that will be cover parts of the south across the equator and parts of the north, right? Because of what it's going to be. Now, if you try and place that at an equatorial plane, right, you're going to need an area bigger than the equatorial plane to place that circle of equal altitude on, and to especially to place two others with it, right? That's why they always pre-assume it's vernal equinox and the equatorial plane of the globe extends out into their celestial plane, and it's stationary and the celestials are moving above it. And that's why they do that, because the circles of equal altitude, when you must use them and place them at the center of a globe, right, you must make that area bigger for those three circles to actually overlap correctly. Then they mathematically can place them as intersecting spherical caps on the surface of their globe, but only after they've done that. Mathematically, right? This is the thing. Remember, we did a presentation before about how you could have three circles of equal altitude that would cover more area, way more area than the full area of a globe Earth. Well, it's kind of like that. Is that where you're going with this, George? Or am I wrong?
I wasn't going that far, but yeah, I'm following you. Obviously, they extend the equatorial plane to the what they call the. There's another plane for it. I've forgotten about that. Yeah, they just extend the plane. I know.
It's equatorial and celestial.
To fit the model.
It's the equatorial and extended celestial planes.
Yeah, the celestial plane. Well, exactly. That's the word I was looking for.
If you're 45 degrees south and you have an angle to the sun, and your angle to the sun is 52 degrees or whatever, so it's greater than your distance between you and the equator, right? If the straight line distance between you and the DP of the sun is greater, or whatever celestial body is greater than the distance between you and the equator, then that circle of equal altitude is going to cross over the equator, right, at that point. Now, how can they have a flat circle of equal altitude, right, that crosses the equator on their globe? They can't, which is why they must place everything at vernal equinox, and why then they must back calculate them as they must change the size of the circle for the globe, you see. That's what they do. Because remember, that straight radius that gives you the circle of equal altitude, that becomes an arc length on their globe. And that arc length then will give them the circle, right? So that arc length is the actual original radius, but they've created a new radius that goes through the center of their globe to the to their like pivot point between their north and south poles, geographic poles. That's what they do. It's all mathematical nonsense.
Right, do we want to do a bit of this Joe Rogan thing? I know it's not Joe Rogan, it's the guy that spoke to him responding after the fact.
Well, it's Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is I don't watch him myself, but he's a member of that Daily Wire, and he's brought out a documentary about racism only in the past week or two, and it's breaking box office records or something. So he's very popular, but he comes across normally as being very logical to people. I don't watch the guy myself, not to me, but to other people maybe. But he when it comes to this issue, he's a bonehead. It's funny how that can happen, whether it's intentional or not.
Newest episode on the Joe Rogan Experience dropped yesterday, and I had a great time on the show. Second time doing the show, and Joe loved the film. Am I Racist? He gave us his endorsement.
So that's what he's there on Joe Rogan doing. He's plugging his most recent show, but he's chatting about the moon landing while he's there, presumably.
So if you're a big Joe Rogan fan, you heard it from the man himself. He said it's a very funny movie. He said, in fact, it was one of the funniest movies he's seen in a long time. So, you should urge this. This has been one of my professional ambitions now for probably a decade, is to go on Joe Rogan's show and talk about something like that. Talk about aliens, talk about moon landing, something in that vein.
Why? Anybody know why? Why would he want to talk about that with Joe Rogan particularly? Why is that his ambition?
Because he's got problems with, and he can't look past heliocentrism, and he's having problems. That's what. He's having sleepless nights due to people like us.
Oh, okay. I just want to get some context. So you're saying he's an anti-flatty?
He doesn't know he is, but he is.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
The first time I did the show, we didn't get into any of that kind of stuff. And so I was actually happy. I'm like, yes, this is my great ambition, is to talk about this kind of thing on this show. So it was great. And I was the one who sort of brought it up. I brought it up as an aside in some other context. We were talking about flat Earth. Okay, so there's another thing. We're talking about flat Earth theory, which Joe,
I'm going to say, doesn't know what science is, doesn't know what theory is. So we're getting somewhere straight away.
Well, it's like this. It's one of these situations. Let's just say you say the Earth is flat and stationary. You can show and prove it, which you do say and can prove it, right? Outright. And let's just say you say, don't do this thing or vote for that person because of X, Y reason. And you turn out to be correct. And then you say, don't buy this car because of blah, blah, blah. You turn out to be correct. But then you turn around and say that you have a problem with the color green not being purple. Right. How does any of your previous correctness have anything to do with that? If you have a problem with green not being purple, that is a you issue that is obviously something personal that you can't, let's say, lean back on the correctness of your past decisions. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people like this guy, Matt Walsh, whether he's put forward intentionally to do this or it's just personal. It could probably just personal, right? Where I'm correct about all these other things, so that I must be correct about this thing as well. You know, this kind of attitude, a bit like the Polaris when we first encountered them. There's no way they can be wrong. This kind of attitude. It's like, no, you can't be an out.
That's a pride thing.
I think it's like they don't understand. They don't understand when they're defending a religious belief that they don't know they have, and when they're defending something from a logical standpoint. Okay. The same person can defend something logically and do a good job, but then go into complete, ridiculum when they're trying to defend a religion they don't know that they're trying to defend.
So what's this guy's name? Matt Walsh.
Yes, he's very, very big. He has massive following.
W-A-L-S-H.
Yeah, W-A-L-S-H.
Okay. Just putting it into the title of the show.
I was not a flat Earth guy. And then I mentioned the moon landing conspiracy theory as an aside. I thought that Joe was a moon landing believer like I am. I know he had a joke in his Netflix special recently about...
I like his phraseology. Yes, you are a moon landing believer. Because that's what it requires.
Denying the moon landing.
Well,
I wasn't sure if that...
Yeah.
Just a little bit of history. Joe Rogan, a lot of people in this arena would know, but maybe new people who might listen to this may not know. Joe Rogan, many years ago, when he first started becoming a comedian and then doing documentaries, one of the things he was attacking was the moon landing. Right? Anyone from around years ago would remember that, saying it's a load of rubbish. But then suddenly he came out and said, after talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson or something, saying, I was totally wrong. I was wrong about everything. The moon landing definitely happened. I was a fool to even try and deny it. This kind of, this kind of thing. Complete 180-degree switch in his view. And then he became the biggest podcast in the world. And now suddenly he's back to the moon landing is not really plausible. It's like, come on, Joe.
Yes, he's proper
Some
flip. He
consistency.
has flip-flopped considerably on this subject. Yes.
That reflected his actual
Yeah.
views. And we talked about it. It turns out that, well, as he explained, he doesn't outright deny the moon landing, but he is much more open to the possibility that it is a hoax than he was in the past.
Yes, he does. He did years ago. He outright denied it. Sorry, no, he did years ago.
Okay, but I vaguely remember his denial, and his denial was based on shoddy reasoning. So either way, I mean, I personally, knowing this backstory, don't really hold it that much against Joe, as much as a lot of conspiratards can read a lot more into it than I think is necessary. But
Well, no, sorry.
go on.
When did his
not
opinion
being
change?
a
Because I thought Neil
conspirator, as you might
deGrasse
want
Tyson
to.
spanked him.
Neil deGrasse Tyson did spank him in the same way he spanked Katy Perry. That's what his job is. He's like the Globe Police.
He's the official spanker.
But the thing is that
Well, I
me
thought he
not
wasn't
being
allowed
a
to have a
conspirator.
position change. I mean, it seems weird.
Say again, Vaxi.
I'm surprised he switched his position again, because originally he was super anti-moon landing. Then Neil deGrasse Tyson got on a show, thanked him, and I thought he wouldn't be allowed to say it anymore. So, because this is all new, right? This movie just came out this summer, didn't it?
The movie's about racism.
Well, right, but I mean, this whole thing with him on a show just happened, so it's like, it's up to date. So he's switched his opinion again. So he went from not believing the moon landing to being told the moon landing was real, but now he's back to not believing it.
Well, yeah, again, it's kind of a bit like, although we got it in the neck from QE for not doing a good enough job of pulling apart the main arguments, when we described Candace Owens as being like Ron Burgundy, these people are very fickle. Well, Joe Rogan, when you're dealing with so many different people with so many different subjects, can appear or is fickle. Now, like I say, unless he had a really solid grounding in his original claims of not believing the moon landing, it's like this is a really good false dichotomy. Whether or not you believe the moon landing took place or don't believe the moon landing took place is kind of a irrelevant argument when you know why it couldn't have possibly took place. When you know that the sky can't be a vacuum to traverse to get to the moon, or we'd all be dead, we'd have never developed gas pressure to be breathing. If you could traverse high pressure gas into a vacuum, it's a violation of natural law. So you know that all claims from the place they travelled through, that's the sky vacuum, aka outer space, isn't real. So any claimed journeys through it are not real. And if a journey claimed to have taken place through it ended up at the moon, you know that the travel to the moon isn't real, because the place that they've have to have travelled through, sky vacuum, isn't real. So if it'd have come at it, whatever, 10, probably 12 years ago now, from that position, you'd be like, there's no way you can suddenly go back on an understanding of natural law. If I turned around tomorrow and said, you know what, I do actually think they could have gone to the moon, you, my audience, and everyone around me would go, you know they can't go via a sky vacuum to what they claim is a rock in the sky vacuum, because you can't have a sky vacuum. We must be under containment to be breathing high-pressure gas. So if I, Nathan Oakley, were to say, I now believe the narrative of the moon landing, if my audience and everyone around turned around and said, that's not flip-flopping, that's not being a bit fickle, you've been paid off, you're a shill. There's no other way to conclude that. Now with Joe Rogan, yeah, he had a chat with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Don't read more into that than what it is. You've got a high priest coming to tell you that your faith isn't in order and you need to get it in order. And temporarily, being fickle and a journo, he's turned around and said, yeah, okay, well, I do believe it then, based on this high priest's words. Fair enough, he's easily persuaded. But he didn't have a standing or a grounding in an annihilation of the moon landing to begin with. So he is primed to be repositioned, have his mind changed by a high priest like Tyson, and then still have a doubt. I maybe don't believe it, even though Tyson told me 5-7, however many years ago, that I was wrong in not believing in it, and that I should believe in it with all of his evidence. That's very different. If you, the audience, understand why space is fake, it goes without saying that they didn't go to the moon. It goes without saying they didn't take pictures from the sky vacuum that doesn't exist. You look at a picture and go, I'm not going to argue about the chroma key or the type of photography or the equipment used to take. It's claimed to come from a place that isn't real. I'm not going to argue about the quality of the picture's snow when you say it's come from Narnia. I know Narnia's not real. I'm not going to argue about the gas lamp. But that's what they want you to do. That's what he has been doing. So I don't see it as shilly to be flip-flopping in this regard. It'd be shilly for me to be doing that. I know it isn't real.
Yeah, but Nathan, you're missing something here. This to me sounds like a rewriting of history. Joe Rogan suddenly kind of has reservations about the moon landing. It's like, no, Joe Rogan outright denied it 12 years ago. Do you know what I mean? It's a rewrite history for the masses, the new people, TikTok, whatever.
Yeah, I stand by what I said. Unless he had a cast iron reason to deny it in the first place, his flip-flopping is perfectly... I mean, it doesn't look good on him. And you can go, well, you know, last year you said you did believe it, this year you said you don't, next year you say you will again. You know, that... So what? It's only at the point that you've got an absolute cast iron reason to deny it and then you change your mind. You'll never catch me saying, oh, it could be a bigger ball, a la David Weiss. You won't catch me doing that because I would struggle. You'd hear me lying. You know when I catch people stuttering? Yeah, that's how I would say. I'm almost doing it just thinking about saying it. You start stammering over your words. If I'm to say, it could be a bigger ball, I know damn well it can't be. So for me to say that would be difficult. One of the things that the deception detective points out is that cognitively, it's high energy to lie. It takes a lot of energy to produce a mistruth. It's easier to focus on what is truthful. That's why people are weasels and they try and shirk the question because they don't want to just blatantly outright lie. Right? When people do lie, they find it very difficult. It requires a lot of mental investment. So it's to be avoided if you're smart. Well, when Joe says, I do believe it, I don't believe it, I do believe it, I don't believe it, I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's because you are focusing on what to believe. Well, everyone who watches this knows damn well we don't have a belief in anything. We know the moon landing's not real. There's no belief involved. There's laws of nature involved in debunking the claim that there was a moon landing.
Well, what was one of the key things that Neil deGrasse Tyson said to him that caused him to believe that the moon landing was real?
Who cares?
Fuel?
Who cares? Doesn't matter what it took to convince Joe Rogan that he can believe in the moon landings. We focus on how we are at pressure. In order to have pressure, gas, that's air that we're breathing, we must be under containment. To achieve the gas pressure, their rhetoric has them traversing high-pressure gas into a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum called outer space to arrive on a rock floating around in said vacuum. No, the gas would have never developed pressure in the first place if the sky was a vacuum. That system is nonsensical and violates natural law. Ergo, any claims of pictures from said sky vacuum are fake, including but not limited to the moon landing. Now, we know that. Joe does not.
That's what I'm saying.
What did the sorry, Neil.
No, that's what I'm saying. Something silly like that caused him to, oh yeah, it really happened again? Come on.
One of the things, just before we continue on, one of the things that has always irked me about the whole heliocentrism thing, this is before I ever got into flat earth, was how do all these things, rocks and whatever else, planets out in this sky vacuum, right, how does it all float? I mean, nothing floats in a vacuum. You know what I mean? How does it float? How does the moon stay floating in a vacuum?
Oh, we could do this all day.
You
This
can't
is
use
great.
it as an argument, but it's just stupidity.
Wonderful. Yeah. Once you understand the complexities of the nonsense, you can start asking about the basics, Brian, and it suddenly becomes a lot more pertinent because you're not going to be bamboozled by people telling you about gravity and bent fourth-dimensional pseudo-Riemannian geodesics in space-time being the cause of things falling around through said geodesic when you ask why things are floating in the sky. No, you can come down to brass tacks once you understand the complexities and how nonsensical they are in heliocentrism, and indeed the origins of where those necessities for the mathematics came from. That would be a flat Earth measurement process. Meanwhile, you can ask those questions. Why would there be a rock, that's the moon, floating around in the sky if it's a vacuum or else? Why? It makes no sense. Why would we be dangling off the bottom of a ball when we assume that we're antipodal in Antarctica? Why would we assume we're dangling off the bottom of a ball? This is stupid. Why would we assume the sun is a giant ball of gas not expanding into a sky vacuum? Why would we do such stupid things? Well, because we were born and raised in the idea that we're on a ball flying through a vacuum. No other reason.
Well, it's the very...
That's pretty obvious. Right? It's because we're on a floating rock. Staring at another floating rock.
Yeah, we're on a rock. What? Don't ask why the moon's a floating rock. Ask why you are on a floating rock. What? No, the moon doesn't seem like a floating rock. It just looks like a light. No, ask yourself why you're on a rock and you're actually flying around the sun. What?
Because I know...
The same people that taught you 2 + 2 is 4 taught you that you are in a solar system. End the story.
Yeah, hang on. 1 second. But because I know heliocentrism and its history so well, I know their answer is very simple, right? That there is no down, because down is only to a center point. So the moon is not falling down through a vacuum, because down would be to a moon center, because down doesn't exist within heliocentrism, or up, because they require a horizontal plane of reference. Why is down on a globe? There is no down. It's to the center. And up is away from the surface. You know what I mean? So that's what they would come out with. But there's nowhere for it to fall because there is no down.
I did it better. I said it's moving along a geodesic.
Yeah, but things fall down in vacuums. But there isn't a down to fall in.
Yeah, they're moving along a bent geodesic in the fourth dimension of space-time. As you described, when you said falling, you're talking about the motion of an orbit. That's gravitational orbital motion through a bent geodesic in a fourth dimension. Man, I'm good at this. I shouldn't know. This is all shite. This is pushing useful stuff out of my head. I don't care about any of this crap. Why do I know this stuff?
There's no falling in general relativity.
Yeah, in Newtonian former orbital motion prior to Keplerian orbital motion. They're falling, right?
How can they fall around something when there is no down to fall into?
And not. They're moving along a geodesic in a fourth dimension.
Not in Newtonian that you just said. Geodesic is Einsteinian.
Geodesic, yeah. Did I say falling through a geodesic? Moving along a geodesic, sorry.
Yeah, but moving along a geodesic, that's why Einstein claims that space-time is a flat plane.
Man, that is...
Because there is no falling.
Almost as irritating. Not only am I irritatingly decrying this stupid knowledge that I have that I don't want or need, not only am I decrying it, Brian's slightly better at this useless information and can catch me saying the word falling through a geodesic and correct me on it. It just boggles your mind though, Brian. Do you have, beyond undoing fundamentalist religious zealots in their belief, do you have any use for this crap? Just pray tell.
No, it's of absolutely no use.
What about optical dissolution points at the horizon? Any useful practical application for this worthless garbage that's shoving useful stuff out of your head?
Not unless I can somehow relate it to engineering in the real world, no.
Are you generally relating optical dissolution points to engineering in the real world on a day-to-day basis, Brian?
No, there's no need to do that.
No, so
Not that I'm aware of.
but for the fact that we've got a Keplerian, you want to change the terminology of that? Let's just brush past that for this moment in time. We'll get to that later. But for the Copernican religious belief of being on a ball in a vacuum as trained into you from birth, and the further to that 109 year in effect moving through a geodesic in space-time as an explanation for rocks that we are falling around the sun in a Keplerian elliptical orbital motion, and the optical dissolution point that Keplerian / Copernican model would create in terms of the inference of a dissolution point actually inferred to be a hill blocking your view. None of this actually has any practical application for anybody beyond better predicting where the stars might be. Say again?
There's no falling in general relativity.
I did it again. Aside from my slight inaccuracy in the bent geodesic convolution of fourth dimensional space-time directionality, the vector being moving as opposed to falling. Yes, second time's a charm. There's no use to it.
Justice for George, because he was questioned earlier for being in the paradigm, and now here we are back in the paradigm.
I'm saying there's no use for it. I'm concluding I just got rumpused. I was 3 words away. There's no use for it beyond Kepler's original use for elliptical orbital motion to better predict where stars would be. When's Easter? Well, we're getting it wrong. Well, Kepler then comes along, changes the model. Brian may discuss this with me later, but essentially creates the fundamentals of what we now know as heliocentrism. And he's doing it so that we can better predict when Easter will be. That's what he's charged with by the church. That's the purpose. So they can get it right.
Change?
Say again?
What was it he actually changed?
Ellipses. He just changed it from circular to elliptical, the orbital motions.
He didn't. He changed it from us seeing the sun doing what it's doing over a 12-month period to us going around the sun in an offset elliptical orbit.
I mean, the whole Easter thing is also problematic.
Hold on, just one sec. Yeah, beyond what I declare with the title, yes, obviously it's heliocentrism as we know it, as I said it, but I'm not making it explicitly clear what Brian has just done. Yeah, it's well worth dropping in, as in the fact that we're moving around the sun and in that model, in that. I'm going to get in the neck for all these pedantic things. You're making me stumble over my words, Quantum Eraser and Brian. You're both bastards. Not a model. A mathematical extrapolation from flat Earth angles that Kepler's employing to better predict when Easter will be, based on elliptical motions and Earth moving around the sun. Anyway, it's not useful beyond that, which it's already, in place to be utilized for, like a giant calendar. It's already been being utilized in that way already. It just doesn't work in a single unified system. Well, obviously it doesn't. We've got different motions, different patterns, but they want it to be one system. So they've got one clock to say when things will come. Hence all the fudging of calendars and changing of moon cycles from 13 to 12 and all of these fudgings that come thereafter. Well, they're irrelevant to the actual predictive capabilities of heliocentric mathematics. And they're only there for a function. When will these events take place? Because we can't tell the congregation that Easter's going to be after the next full moon, and then the stars don't line up correctly, and it's actually after the next full moon. That will make us look pretty bad.
But a lot of this comes down to the changing of calendars and the messing around with things as well. But look, let's be honest. Most of heliocentrism is just smart-ass information, isn't it? You can just be a little smart-ass.
I call it...
Which are little heliocentrism, because that's what I was good for.
Well, I call it out-of-the-box thinking. I don't know if it's being a smart-ass, because when I read about it in the book that John D sent me, the book was called The Sun in the Church, and they're taking... It's basically explaining the necessity to do this. And you say smart-ass thinking. Well, yeah, it is smart-ass thinking. Well, what if we're a ball? What if we're moving around the sun? I prefer to call it out-of-the-box thinking. You've got people who are, in charge of the telescopes, in charge of the observations and the observatories, and they're run by the church, owned by, they still are. You know, people look at the Lucifer telescope and look at where its origins are in the most recent history of exceptionally expensive equipment. Yeah, it's run and owned by the church. Well, when they're looking at these motions, they're charging the mathematicians to come up with the answers. So, yes, they've got to employ out-of-the-box thinking. You just don't... I'm sure they didn't think for 1 second that their out-of-the-box thinking and mathematics, based on the positional information of stars, that they undoubtedly understood were measured with respect to a plane, can be converted into this ball-earth elliptical motion around the sun, and, you know, that in a pattern can give you a better idea of when these retrograde motions now will take place and line up in a certain way. Therefore, we've got a better idea of when these star alignments will give us these particular dates that we need to tell our congregations about. So they're being charged with something, these mathematicians, that is, and they're trying to solve problems. I don't think they're doing it so they can rub their hands together and go, I think that this information that will give us a better idea of when something will happen will turn into a world where we are standing on my mathematics and told that we're physically moving around the sun. I don't think any of them would have actually anticipated that that's what the information would ever turn into 300 years later in the case of Kepler.
I'd have to disagree with that, but I'm not going to go into my disagreement now. What I want to point out is that what I said is smart-ass information. A lot of heliocentric information is just smart-ass information. As in, someone like Whitsitt can use it and blurt out a load of heliocentrism or geocentrism, whichever one he wants to be blurting out, but it's all based in the same paradigm, right? And it's like, wow, that person really knows loads of stuff. Well, it's not true. The stuff they know that they're blurting out means absolutely nothing.
Right. Yeah, like me saying, yeah, I got you, and now I follow your vibe. Where I'm saying, God, this is useful information taking up space, that doesn't help me with anything and has no practical application. It's also very useful word salad and nonsense waffle to make people think you're smart. I mean, I don't know how many people, if I was to ask if it was a room full of actual people that I could do a quick straw poll on, would raise their hands if I said, as I was waffling off bent geodesics in space-time, up until the moment Brian said you can't fall through a geodesic, did you all think I sounded incredibly intellectual with my nonsense waffle about heliocentrism? Because that's all it is. Verbal masturbation.
Yeah, me correcting you that's all that was as well.
That's why I laughed.
It has relevance. It has relevance.
Oh, it's correct. You were right to correct me. But it's worthy of a giggle between you and I, isn't it? It's worth a laugh, because I'm talking about how stupid and non-useful it is, and then you correct me on it. And your correction, mathematically speaking, was true. You're right. But it's still just, if we were talking about it sincerely, oh, actually, Nathan, you don't fall through a geodesic. One meanders along a geodesic in space-time, or whatever bullshit word that you added in.
Rubbish,
yeah, you know.
Well, the only place that any of it, what we were talking about a minute ago, and my little corrections of you, and it being all in jest, right? The only place that's important is in any way connected to this debate is that when we say down doesn't exist within your paradigm, that's what we mean. There is no down to fall in with what they call Newtonian, right? Gravity, because that's not a down, because down is only to the center. So there isn't a down. It's to the center or away from the surface. So there's no falling in what they claim incorrectly called Newtonian, or maybe correctly called Newtonian in that paradigm. And there's no down or falling in general relativity. So there is no down within their paradigm. So we're correct to state, and with proof within their paradigm, from true history, there is no down. There can't be a down. So in that way, that's the only use it has.
Right, and I kind of undermine it if I say down in a geodesic, because for both paradigm, both gravity, you have no down in or along, either along a geodesic or in towards the centre of a mass. That's your only option. So my down incorrect assertion, as humorous as it is to have the verbal masturbation of correction in terms of heliocentrism, man, that was a mouthful, it still does actually undermine part of our argument. If we give them down, if I give it them verbally, they'll use it, won't they?
Well, I don't know if they'd be sharp enough, most of them, to use it, or if they would go to the position of using it. But
Potentially.
just down or falling involves down. That doesn't exist within their paradigm. It can't within their paradigm. You know what I mean? All the other descriptions involve either an into the center, as you said, or along a geodesic. There's no down.
Right.
You know? So, yeah. Other than that, though, what other use has any of it got?
None.
None.
No, it gives us a better idea of when the stars will be in certain positions. You know, it alters. It gives us retrograde motion instead of. I can never remember the other one that they call it. Prior to retrograde. It's right on the tip of my tongue.
It's an astrological term. I can't think of it.
Somebody will tell me in the comments. I mean, no doubt. What's the one that came before retrograde motion? I can never remember the name of it. Anyway, what I'm going to do in the meantime. Go on.
Epicycles?
Epicycles! Boom. You got there first.
Oh, I got it.
10 points. Yeah, epicycles. Anyway, right. Moving on from elliptical motion and orbital wankery, let's get back onto actually promoting this guy, because I haven't done it yet. So, not that he needs any bleeding promotion. My God, he's got a massive channel, hasn't he? Okay, anyway, regardless, it wouldn't matter if he got 10 subscribers or 10 million. Please let him know. At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. The guy's called Matt Walsh. Please leave him a non-offensive, non-swearing comment that alludes to the fact that we have responded to his video. And every bit of discussion has been strictly geared around what he has said to date. It just happened to expand into a massive discussion about heliocentric paradigms and beliefs, which is what moon landings are based on. Anyway, please let him know, as you can see going by in the comments now, that at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Hopefully, with any luck, should he do a response to Flat Earth Debate, that's us discussing his video, he'd do the same for us and put a link to Nathan Oakley 1980 channel. Chance would be a fine thing. In the meantime, let him know. At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with a nice, polite comment. I'll stick another link in the YouTube live stream chat so you can actually do it right now. And that is to say, there is 120 people currently watching. It's gone up to 133 at one stage. It's flickering all over the place. God only knows what's wrong with the view count. In any event, there's over 100 people watching. So some of you can literally toddle along to Matt Walsh's channel right now while I'm doing this call to action to let him know that we have responded to his video. I am going to stay live for a little bit longer. And obviously, I'm going to have my spies go and check that some of you have actually done this. I'm lying, there are no spies. But please do it. Go and actually leave him a comment. But just let him know that we've responded to his video. And like I say, hopefully he'd do the same for us if he was to respond to us. We'll crack on with a little bit more of the video. Hopefully that's given enough time for a few of the live participants in the audience to actually toddle along, leave them a comment, and then come back to see that we're still doing the same call to action. And then we'll get into the video once they return so they don't feel robbed by disappearing temporarily and then coming back after leaving a comment for Matt. Okie dokie. I have actually seen this guy before, you know. I've seen him on shorts videos and on TikTok where people edit out 25, 30 seconds of something he said that they like. So I am familiar with him. Although, like you, Brian, I wouldn't say I watched this guy. I didn't know his name. But I have seen him before and seen him give good opinions. And to date, I haven't, from memory, seen anything that I've watched him say when he's been debating in universities or at political marches or the various things I've seen him doing and gone, I don't agree with you. I don't recall going, I think this guy's bad and he's got bad opinions. I don't recall that ever happening thus far. Until now, obviously, when it's on our specialist subject, there's plenty to pull apart, and I'm sure that'd be true for all the videos I've watched to date if someone was a specialist in whatever field he was covering, be it abortion or gun control or whatever he typically covers, that there would be people in those specialist areas that did disagree with him. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that, like I say, I didn't find the guy particularly egregious when I've seen him in the past. Brian, would you not agree?
No, he's covered What Is a Woman as one of his. He's made a few documentaries that were very controversial and very popular. Of course, his most recent one is Am I Racist? You know, so he makes a lot of he makes a lot of sense when it comes to other topics, but when it comes to this would be the hill he'll die on.
Okay.
Because he's fighting from a belief.
Was it him that did that? Yes, I do remember that now. That's probably where I've seen him predominantly, where he's asking that very question. If he was the originator of that, that's an excellent question. Because we adhere to that. Go on.
He's got daughters and he doesn't want them to have to share bathrooms with biological men.
fine. His motivation doesn't
Things like
concern
that,
me.
yeah.
It was more an appeal to the way he phrased the logic of his statement or his question, right? If you ask what is a woman, you're alluding to what we discuss here. I can't remember if it was Mary Schweitzer or someone similar who said words have meaning. Choose your words carefully. What does that actually mean? It means that words have specific definitions. And when you speak and converse with somebody, if you use incorrect language and terminology, then miscommunication is going to occur. You have to be careful about what you say, and you have to mean the words that you use. Now, if you choose to ignore what words mean, there's going to be problems. So when it comes to the current transgender debate, this particular question that he asked was right at the root of language and how we communicate, which is all this boils down to me. But nevertheless, it was a simple question that I thought was very pertinent in the current discussion, mainly because of how we approach things. What is the definition? What do you mean by that word? Let's define it. It's called the Socratic method. If you say man and I say man but mean tangerine, then we've got a problem. As I discuss tangerines and use the word man as I discuss what a tangerine is, and you go, huh? This conversation's not making any sense. What do you mean by man? And I go, small fruit, looks a bit like an orange, skin comes away really easily, very juicy and delicious. And you go, when you say man, do you mean tangerine? And I go, no, I call those man. Then everyone scratches their head and go, no, we need to come to some conclusion here based on what words mean. And based on their definitions is how we communicate. That's called the Socratic method. We have to agree on what words mean in context by definition. That's what we do here. Don't say tangerine if you mean banana.
So I'll play a little bit of that conversation, but this went on, like I said, for like an hour. I think it's worth going and watching the whole thing. But this is about 2.5 minutes of that exchange. Here it is.
The Joe Rogan experience.
You're moon landing. You're not a... You believe in the moon landing, right?
Leading question. You believe in the moon landing. Number one, why would you ask him about his beliefs? Everyone's entitled to their beliefs, aren't they? So opening with you believe in the moon landing, wouldn't it be a better question to ask if he knows we went to the moon or not? Why Joe Rogan would know such things, I don't know, but you're just affirming whose belief, whose religion is whose, right? Are you in the same cult as me?
I used to believe in the moon landing.
You don't anymore?
I used to be in that cult.
I had a joke in my act about it, that before COVID, I would have told you vaccines the most important invention in human history. And after COVID, I'm like, I don't think we went to the moon.
Yeah, I know that was in your... But
yeah.
you actually...
I'm pretty sure that you flip-flopped twice before that, Joe. You think it was just after COVID, do you? Bless your little cotton socks. History hasn't been erased. We're all aware of your flip-flopping, mate. Just after COVID. What a bullshitter. Oh, that's I don't know. Maybe Joe is a bit of a bullshitter, but hello.
He definitely is.
The guy's a complete sellout.
I think there's
like...
Go ahead, Angels.
All right.
No, that was my
Joe
memory.
Rogan said there is no way we didn't go to the moon, right? Then he had Neil deGrasse Tyson in front of him, and he's like, "There's no. Oh, of course we went." Like he changes his mind 180 completely to whoever he's got in front of him.
Yeah, he's totally fickle. I agree. Go on, Brian.
Give him 4 million subscribers.
Yeah, exactly.
there is a less than zero
also said
possibility that we did not go to the moon.
Oh, my gosh.
I know. Why do you think we went to the moon?
Well, because it's exactly what you just said about... Well, there's a lot of reasons, but the main thing is what you just said about the Earth. The vastness of the conspiracy that would be required to fail.
That's not what he asked you. Why do you think we went to the moon? And you're talking about the conspiracy rather than why we went to the moon. Now, I know you can't know this, so I'm putting unreasonable standards based on what I know. I know you can't justify your belief, so your immediate appeal is to the conspiracy that would have to surround not going. Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, I stepped on your toes, Nathan. I was just coming in with the word motivation. He's appealing. Oh, motivation would say that. You know what I mean? Well, what's the motivation? It's like it's not to do with motivation. It's because it's a law of nature.
Okay, just in case
Can't
he
be
watches
violated.
this, there's a good chance that if it was me watching this and it was a response video, I'd just fast forward to the bits with me in and then listen to what they've got to say. So, just for Matt and Joe, for that matter, sky vacuum isn't real. The journey to the moon would involve traversing a 10 to the minus 17 torr sky vacuum. Now, for us to be at high pressure, there must be containment for the gas we breathe to press upon. In the paradigm of a heliocentric sky vacuum ball Earth, the claim is that we get in a rocket, traverse high pressure gas that's not under containment into a vacuum, waving goodbye to high pressure gas as we do so. A violation of the second law of thermodynamics. Gas expands into whatever volume it has available to it. If the sky was an available volume, that is to say a vacuum, as is claimed, then the gas we breathe would fill the space. We'd have never developed gas pressure, we'd all be dead. There is no sky vacuum to take a trip through to arrive on a rock claimed to be the moon. Ergo, the moon landing's fake. There's no doubt about that. It's a violation of natural law. Go ahead.
Gas pressure, regretting or not, requires containment. And even to have a vacuum in the first place requires containment. And they're saying that both these things are coexisting. And it's exactly what you said. If that were true, all of the gas we have would exit into the infinite vacuum and we'd have no air to breathe.
Yeah, it would have never developed in the first place. Go ahead.
Don't forget temperature. You can't have gas pressure, temperature, or vacuum without containment.
Yeah, all of these things are a delta. First, containment. Then, gas pressure. Then you can have heat transfer. Then you can have pressure gradients. Then you can have dynamic systems. They all come as a consequence of being under containment so we can achieve gas pressure. The violation thereof would be to suggest that the sky is a vacuum and we can traverse it to go to the moon.
Fake that. It's so vast that it's a lot more incredible to believe that we faked it than to believe that we just went. And going to the moon, it's a massive achievement.
No, there was nothing achieved because it was all a lie. We didn't traverse the sky vacuum. They didn't go to the moon. There was no achievement. You just believe that they did it, and your belief supersedes the idea that it could be fake, to the point where you would decry any suggestion that your belief could be challenged as a vast conspiracy, more vast than your belief could tolerate. That's your justification. Not very high standards. Go ahead.
Sorry. In the words of Buzz Aldrin, it didn't happen.
But I think the greatest human achievement of all time. But even so, to fake it would be even more massive.
Go ahead, Brian.
Just to put a cap on what he's saying, it's only within the past 4 years that the whole world, right, gave up their power to the officials, right, to deal with a medical issue. I'm not going to go into it. The point is that if he thinks that the whole world can't be fooled simultaneously, or can't be led down the wrong path simultaneously, or the whole world just can't be incorrect simultaneously, then there's evidence that he's completely wrong. Doesn't matter what COVID was about, right? Never mind the conspiracy. Point is that don't be telling me that the whole world can't be duped or can't be just incorrect, because they can be.
Because not only would you need all of these space agencies and all the different whatever people in American institutions to be colluding, but you'd also need foreign governments, including adversaries.
What was with that sentence, stammery fragment? What was that all about? Does he just realise that his weak-ass standards are exactly that? Is that why he's fumbling over his words?
Foreign governments, who at this point certainly would know we faked it, and for some reason haven't blown the lid on it. So they're letting us like take this achievement that they know.
So this guy, he presumably is aware that we get disclosure all the time from 50 years previous where they reveal all of the lies they told to our last generation of people who were deceived. Here's how we lied to them. But that was 50 years ago. They wouldn't lie to us now. The government would have to know they were lying to us. Okay, that's your justification, is it? I mean, I don't need to ponder any of this. I mean, it's more interesting from a psychological point of view as how you ponder this problem in your faith and discuss it with Joe. Like, Joe's going to know. But, you know, you can discuss your affinity to the same faith on this show. We know it's fake. Yeah, so the ponderance of whether or not it'd be very difficult and expensive to fake it is irrelevant. Oh, they absolutely faked it. How difficult and expensive it would be. Go and watch the movie called Gravity. Then you'll know exactly how easy it is to fake to a higher standard. You having me on? Have you not seen a space movie? Are you kidding me? The crappy low standards of NASA is enough to convince you, is it? All right, okay, the crapo vision worked its charm, did it?
You know, like why haven't the Russians come out and said
all those things you're saying are true? Right. I don't argue with any of the things you're saying. But one of the things that I think you have to consider is if it's not possible for human beings to safely go through the
vacuum of space,
Van Allen radiation belts, and out into deep space without...
Yeah, it's claimed to be a sky vacuum, Joe. We'd all be dead. You wouldn't be breathing that yummy, yummy air that you're breathing right now. Right? Gas fills space. That's how gas behaves. It's a law of nature. It's called the second law of thermodynamics. It describes entropic dispersion in this instance, with gas filling whatever available volume it has. Thank you to Mike808. I assume you said something rude because it's been removed by YouTube and it's just come up as a blank super chat. But whatever you said, I'm sure it was pertinent. Thank you so much for this super chat. Really appreciate the support. Thank you very much indeed.
You know what's funny? Sorry. You know what's funny? On NASA's website, they show the phases of matter and they show containment for everything. And they show liquid finding its level in the container, and then gas has a container around it.
Yeah, NASA defined what gas pressure is. It's the force exerted on the walls of its containment. That's how gas pressure is defined by NASA.
Much protection. And face the temperatures that are on the surface of the moon.
Go on, whoever's from G+, go ahead.
So I also have a quote for Joe, if he ever happens to listen to this, from NASA themselves. We need to solve these problems before we can send people to this region of space. End quote.
Yeah, I hate this, though. So while I assumed he was going to say the vacuum of space, while he did get to the vacuum of space, he peppered it with the Van Allen belt. So we can discuss whether or not there's a Van Allen belt in an area of volume gas isn't filling. This is another dichotomy that leaves you in a presupposition of the sky vacuum being in existence, while you debate about whether or not there is a Van Allen radiation belt that would or would not have had to be traversed by the people who went to the moon originally. So let's debate about whether or not space has a dangerous region that we might not be able to traverse. No, space is fake. Outer space is not what they claim in the form of a vacuum. We'd all be dead. We'd have no high-pressure gas to be breathing. There's no men in rockets waving bye-bye at the Kármán line to the high-pressure gas that we're all breathing to enter an area of volume that gas isn't filling, defying natural law. So whether or not an area that defies natural law has a further region that may or may not have killed the... No. Space is fake. Van Allen belt in space, also fake, immediately. Same reasoning.
And that's all cool, but that's a debate they can have between themselves, being that the same people who tell them that they have traversed this region of space are also telling them they haven't traversed this region of space. So maybe they could all work that out and then come check us back later.
Yeah.
That's my point.
That's how this system works. They need you to believe the sky is a vacuum. So don't discuss whether or not the sky is a vacuum. Discuss whether or not rockets can push off vacuums. Can the rocket even provide its own propulsion if it's pushing against nothing? Let's debate about whether rockets work in an area that isn't real. Will the coats provide enough warmth in Narnia? It's 20 below in Narnia. These coats wouldn't have kept them warm enough. Well, in Narnia, there's a gas lamp Did they plumb all of the pipe work for the gas, for the lamp when they arrived? How does the gas lamp even work in Narnia that isn't real? In space, a vacuum where rockets may or may not work. In space, that's fake, that violates natural law, where there may or may not be a Van Allen belt. Space is fake.
Yeah. Could I just add some more things as well? So, space travel in a vacuum violates Newton's third law. You need a medium to push off. Object A, the rocket, has to push off object B. Object B in a vacuum is nothing, right? So not only wouldn't they be able to propel, but they can't move anywhere. They can't slow down. Also, when they trained...
but you're working within that paradigm.
Yeah, you're doing exactly what I've said annoys me. So, not will rockets work in a vacuum, not would the astronauts die as they traversed Van Allen belts in a vacuum. It's there isn't a vacuum. So if there isn't a vacuum, why would I argue about whether or not rockets would work in it?
Yeah.
Right, don't get Jedi mind tricked into arguing about whether or not the gas lamp would have a source of gas in Narnia. Don't argue with me about whether or not the footprints would still be there from the wardrobe to the castle in Narnia. I can argue about whether or not the fur coats would keep them warm enough. But there's no Narnia. There's no space to be arguing about this Van Allen radiation belt. And that's the point. That's why it's out there. So long as you're arguing within the framework of a world that's ball-shaped moving around in this vacuum around the sun, then everyone's happy. Do I care, from a religious point of view, if you believe in Van Allen, that's a person, and his idea of radiation belts in a sky vacuum or not? Well, it's just one man's idea of something that he says existed after they already went to the moon. In this religion, they already went to the moon. So why are you even questioning it? They already went. We told you. What's that Van Allen belt? Oh, yeah, argue amongst yourselves whether or not Van Allen was right or not. But they definitely went through the sky vacuum to the moon and landed on it, and then came back through the sky vacuum and were really pleased about the high pressure gas. In fact, it was going to heat up the ship. We had to worry about how much it would heat it up as we re-entered it. I mean, it's not dissipating into the sky vacuum. It's there waiting for us to heat up the ship, and we've got to put tiles on it. So let's worry about how much the tiles are effective at keeping the rocket ship from burning up on re-entry. Re-entry to what? Well, re-entry to the high-pressure gas that hasn't filled the vacuum. We're re-entering that high-pressure gas. It just happens to be at an arbitrary point, and when we reach it, it starts heating the craft up. Why am I arguing about this? Well, because we've got the narrative where there is a sky vacuum, and we're just worried about when we re-enter the high-pressure gas in violation of natural law, how much it heats the rockets up that haven't gone to a sky vacuum. That's all that matters. Everything else is folly. Everything else is superfluous to the original debunking of this, which is based on that claim. This is a journey to the moon, and that is a sky vacuum that it couldn't have taken place in. That's the end of their argument for a moon landing. I don't care about whether rockets work in vacuums. Doesn't interest me. Gas-filled space. Like when they showed us the rebuttal to this, they showed us a rocket with its own propellant filling a vacuum. You're like, oh, right, so what you're saying is the propellant would be in place of the air that isn't for it to push off. I see. And that works because gas-filled space, does it? The gas is going to expand into the vacuum for the rocket to... Right, so as it's doing that, abidance by entropic law and forcing propellant into the vacuum, we're looking back at Earth not doing that, right? We're arguing about whether the rocket can abide by a natural law when its gas fills the space, as we look back on Earth violating that law. No, we're not going to be doing that. Earth violates that law if we're in that paradigm. End of that paradigm. We don't have a sky vacuum.
Can I just state that there is a low-grade vacuum high in the sky. That's measurable. But that's only there because we have containment, because it's impossible for that to exist without containment. It is created by the sun, which gives us our dynamic system. We have a closed dynamic system, as we can't have gas pressure, temperature, or vacuum without containment.
Yeah,
What they're claiming
okay.
is a
No worries.
completely open, well, just 1 second. What they're claiming is a completely open, uncontained, monstrous, heliocentric sky vacuum.
Yeah, by
That's what they're
definition,
saying.
NASA categorized the sky vacuum as starting where, Brian?
Oh, the Kármán line.
No, incorrect.
Oh, sorry, the sea level.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, so you can define how a vacuum would be the gradation of the gas pressure that we have and describe it as a certain Torr level. That's correct, you can. However, it's a description of a gradiated pressure, as Brian described when he said that that could only be there, defined as a vacuum from sea level, if we are, as I described earlier, under containment to achieve gas pressure to then achieve a delta, which is a gradient. That gradient can be described as a vacuum. Yeah, it can. Linguistically. Doesn't mean the sky is 10 to the minus 17 Torr, or that we can traverse high pressure gas that's not under containment to achieve a landing on the moon that's claimed to be a rock just floating around in said vacuum that violates natural law.
Yeah, my point being is that what we do know is there and what we can prove is there is only possible within a closed dynamic system. It's impossible within an open system.
Correct.
You're not going to have a globe Earth with a load of air at pressure around it, not dispersing and diffusing into this area of massive black vacuum that is of basically zero resistance. Diffusion always happens. The only thing that slows it down is resistance. When there's no resistance, what is there to stop it? Nothing.
Nothing. It just fills the space. We'd all be dead.
So I
Which
just
get
want
up
to
to
clarify,
250 degrees and 250 degrees below zero in the shadows. There's no environment there. It's hostile beyond.
How the bloody hell do you know? Have you been there? No. Don't preach your belief to us, Joe.
Belief. Micrometeorites are flying into the moon all the time. They're flying through space all the time.
There's dragons and warlords and wizards, and it's a magical land of fairies. No, Joe, you're just spouting your belief, mate. You have no idea what they claim is a rock and what the environment would be like. No, it's all bullshit, and it's all based on what they've just told you and shown you with pictures taken on stages, film sets, choreographed moving on stage. You've watched a little play, and based on the play that you've watched, you're telling people how the moon, a light in the sky, is environmentally. No, Joe, no.
We've never had a single biological organism go out into deep space, past the Van Allen radiation belts, and then come back to Earth and come back alive.
We've never been to space. There is no space to go to. So within your rhetoric of debunking the moon landing, you've got what? No amoebas landing on the spaceship and surviving as they traverse the Van Allen belt and come back from orbital motion, also derived from heliocentrism, also derived from flat Earth measurements. The entire religion's based on a worldview that doesn't match with the measurements it's originated in. So ultimately, you've got your faith debunking your faith, just as the powers that would not be or should not be would want you doing. They've got you arguing within the paradigm. So you don't think they've been to the moon because when we go to space, now that's your belief also. This is useless.
Except human beings during the Apollo mission.
Dead.
Sorry. There's no measurements of anything past about 30 to 36 miles. No measurements of anything. No proof of anything past that point. That's the highest point that any high-altitude balloon has ever gone.
Well,
you can't get it past that point.
This Matt guy's only picked out that as the entirety of the clip, which is good because it means we're not responding too much to Joe and more to Matt. So let's see what he's got to say based on that clip.
Missions.
Saying that it was a hoax is an assertion of a. It's not. You're not just denying an event. You're asserting a whole other event that you say happened instead.
Yeah, he is.
And there is evidence that we went to the moon. Now.
No, there is not. Evidence means proof. There is no proof we went via a sky vacuum to a rock claimed to be the moon. You'll never provide any evidence. There is none.
Isn't it
someone
crazy
who's
how
a
they
skeptic
just
might say,
that? They just push that out. Like it's sorry for interrupting. Isn't it crazy how they just say that without batting an eye? It just rolls off their tongue. Like, we've been there. There is evidence. Like, no, there's not. But they just state it as an absolute fact, as if to say, right now I'm sitting down and you're in a chair, or I'm standing up and you're not sitting in a chair, you're standing up. Just crazy how like factually they speak, but it's not.
Yeah, it's called fundamentalist religious zealotry. It is absolutely the case that what they have told him in his religious belief is correct. It cannot be any other way. To assume that they could fake something that is absolutely unequivocally true based on my faith would be so expensive and exorbitant. That's what he's got so far to Joe. And what he's now justifying it with is, I've got evidence, it is true. So your standpoint is, where we go from here is, there is no other option. It is just true in your mind.
it's not enough evidence or it's not good evidence. There's like...
He didn't provide any.
Like evidence. There's eyewitness... There's people that went and came back.
Oh, right, the liars called astronauts. We had a quote from Buzz earlier, didn't we, where he said, we didn't go, end quote, Buzz.
Yeah.
So the
Also,
eyewitness testimony is debunked by natural law. They absolutely did not go and are liars. I'll call them that because they are. If they say they've been to a sky vacuum, what they managed to traverse the high-pressure gas into an area of volume that the gas isn't filling, now that instantaneously makes all of the first-hand testimony lies. And you don't have to spend very long taking apart their testimony as they describe what you could do if you travelled to the moon, as was described recently by an astronaut who was interviewed on a YouTube video. The youngest surviving member that's been to the moon, according to his own testimony. And when he gave it, he put it in the third person. Very unconvincingly. Because he hasn't. He's a liar. He can't traverse high-pressure gas in a rocket and wave goodbye to the gas that we're breathing. We'd all be dead. It violates natural law. The first-hand testimony is your faith in priests who lie. In this instance, astronauts.
And told us there's footage. There's a lot. Okay. There is evidence.
Okay.
But there's
footage. So movies. All right. There's footage of Narnia. Lots of footage of Narnia. Go ahead, whoever that was. Or is it just someone with an open mic in G+?
But there's no evidence of the hoax. Like, no one has come and said, here's my affirmative evidence that this hoax happened.
Please let Matt know with a polite comment that lets him know you have never been presented any evidence, he says, right? So leave him a comment that says, here's my evidence the moon landing is fake. Gas fills space. We'd all be dead if there was a sky vacuum. Ergo, we didn't go to the moon. Alternatively, you can come in here and listen to me saying it by letting him know. At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with a polite comment. There is a link going by in the live stream chat right now so that you can let Matt know a reason. That'll be evidence, as evidenced by the second law of thermodynamics. That is, with respect to gas pressure, a description of gas filling space. Always. That would be it's a law of nature. If the sky was a vacuum for them to travel to the moon through, then the gas you are breathing would fill that space. Instantaneously. We would have never have developed gas pressure because the first particle of gas would come out of the heliocentric bullshit world of a ball earth in a sky vacuum, entered the 10 to the minus 17 torr sky vacuum area of black that you think is the area around your ball, and it would sod off into the sky vacuum to never return. Gas traverses whatever area it has, in whatever vector it is travelling, at a high rate of speed until it collides with something. Now, if it has a container, it will collide with the container and develop gas pressure. That's what gas pressure is. As per the NASA definition, gas pressure, like you are breathing, is the force the gas exerts on the walls of its container. So for us to have gas pressure, there cannot be a sky vacuum to go to the moon through. Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you had finished at that point. You were only taking a break.
Oh, I'm doing a call to action. I'm just asking people to go and let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with a link. So I'm putting it in the live chat. But this prolongment of the call to action does actually encourage people in the live stream to do it now. And there's well over 100 people, 120, 25 people watching. So hopefully they all do that. And your interjection prolongs that, Brian. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, it won't be a very long one, unfortunately. If Matt Walsh went to high school in the United States, then he was presented with evidence because he would have learned about the laws of thermodynamics and entropy. So he was presented with evidence in high school. So unbeknownst to him, he lied to himself.
It's never happened.
Okay, so I kind of gave myself the last word in that clip. Like I said, the conversation goes on for an hour, so you have to watch the whole thing. But I think it's a pretty fair summary. Joe's primary issue, his main bone of contention, is though not only, his main is the Van Allen radiation belt, which is
in a sky vacuum. So just so you know, Matt, we've overcome this, and even given Joe a pass for his flip-flopping based on his low standard that he's debunking it with. Now, maybe you'll attack the low standard that he debunks it with because nobody's informed you, as you just told us. But that's why you're getting my audience telling you that at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me when they leave a comment alluding to just that. So you do have the evidence. We've given it you.
he says humans might not be able to cross. And my main rebuttal, as you just heard, is that there's strong evidence we went to the moon. Meanwhile,
No, your strong evidence was first-hand testimony from liars who claim to be in an area that violates natural law. They are liars. That's astronauts. And footage from an area that violates natural law. Pictures from space that isn't real. So by comparison, yeah, I've spoken to Aslan. He says Narnia is definitely real. And they definitely had fur coats that would protect them in the snow of Narnia. What's that? Evidence? Got loads of footage of people traversing Narnia through wardrobes. No worries, I've got plenty of footage all day long. What's that? They don't say that that's real. Oh, so if I've got footage and I've got first-hand testimony and I say it is real, Bob's your uncle, that's good enough standard for you when it comes to space. In spite of the fact that it violates natural law, as you've now been made aware by my audience telling you that at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, because we provide you with evidence that there is no sky vacuum, therefore no trip to the moon.
There is precisely zero evidence of the hoax. So,
Ed?
But they've never created the magic jackets they need to go through the witch waves.
They have got magic jackets. They've got fur coats. That's what man, you just don't know what the religion of Narnia is, do you? What do you think the wardrobe's for? No magic jackets. They're going through a wardrobe, Brian. What do you think's in the wardrobe? Those coats.
Yeah, but how did they get through the witch waves back in 1969?
The witch wave wasn't even known about in that particular year or time period. They just didn't know about it. Obviously they didn't know about it because when they came back, they were still young. The witch wave, if they knew about it, they would have aged. They didn't age, did they? They were getting older in Narnia. The time dilation problem was completely unbeknownst to people. If they'd have discovered the witch wave, they'd have come back a lot older. But that would have caused all sorts of problem with time. On this side of the wardrobe, Brian, you just don't understand Narnian rhetoric, clearly. Witch wave. They can still go through the wardrobe without us knowing what the witch wave is. Just like they went through the Van Allen belts and it didn't cause a problem, did it? Didn't cause a problem for the lying astronauts, did it, Brian? So why would it cause a problem for all of the kids who went through the wardrobe? Utterly absurd.
I just don't disagree. I just don't agree with you.
Hello, mic check.
Look, I'm not going to have any of it. You can't debunk Narnia just based on there not being an understanding of the witch wave prior to 1969. Just because we didn't know there was a witch wave doesn't mean that we can't go to Narnia. They did. We went. There's footage. There's first-hand testimony. They came back through the wardrobe and told everyone about it. Didn't they? They told you all about how you would experience the time dilation when you went through the wardrobe.
Well, I don't believe you're right.
Well, go on, whoever that was. Let's take us away from this absurdity in comparison to Narnia.
Hello, mic check.
Hello.
Hello.
Just checking if you can be heard. Yes, you can. Do you have anything to add?
I was gonna say, as long as the Spice Guild has enough spice to transfer the Gideon army to the Atreides and Dune, then it proves Earth is a globe.
Yeah, we've got footage of that too, right? Roll VT.
Lots of footage.
Roll the footage.
And I just want to expand on that for a moment. Because in case after watching the Rogan episode, you haven't heard me say enough on this topic already.
What, expansion? Like entropic dispersion, that kind of expansion. Like gas expanding into volumes, that kind of expansion. Is that how you're going to expand on this subject? Like gas would expand into the sky vacuum that isn't real? Is that what you're talking about when you say you've talked about expansion previously? I wonder if that's the kind of expansion he means.
I think I made this point pretty clearly on the show. I returned to it several times, but the main thing is this, again, there is evidence of the moon landing.
It's only the third time you've said it. I mean, if you say it 16 times, it becomes real evidence. Evidence means proof. Yeah, like I've got proof of Narnia with the footage. I've got first-hand testimony of Narnia from the actors who say that they went and describe to you how you would experience it, like the astronauts do for us. They're liars. They didn't go into a second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum. You can say we've got evidence 3 times. I'll just say, no, you haven't. The men who claim to have been in a sky vacuum would be in a violation of a natural law if they were not lying. I know they're lying. I know the sky isn't a sky vacuum, and I know, therefore, that there was no trip to the moon. Just saying 3 times we have evidence is you chanting, Matthew. Chanting your religious rhetoric.
Landing. Really good evidence.
4th time's a charm. Really good. No. Maybe it's really good, super duper wonderful evidence that took place in Narnia. I mean, a sky vacuum.
And yet there is no evidence of a hoax. And as
You're interrupting him telling us about the really, really super duper marvelous, exceptional mundo evidence. Go ahead, Brian.
No, I just said he might have really, really good evidence because he said he had evidence. Then he said he had really good evidence, but we haven't heard of it yet.
I tried to argue the moon landing hoax is an event, right? If it happened, it's an event. It is a thing that happened.
What the bloody hell is this? I've never heard him spout so much drivel. I mean, admittedly, I'm watching the best clips when I see him on his shorts videos. But sentence fragments, repetition, chanting, and incoherent word salad drivel. That's what this guy's spouting currently.
It's not simply the absence of an event.
So the moon landing conspiracy is an event. It's an actual event. It's an event. It's not the absence of an event. It's an event.
He's
okay.
trying to rationalize it in real time, is what it seems like. Like, no filter on his thoughts. He's just saying whatever he's thinking, trying to rationalize it.
No, mate, it was fake. It was filmed on a stage with stop motion animation, the technology of the time. You've only got to look at the moon landing footage to see that it looks like Thunderbirds. It's pathetic. It's crap footage from a crap time with crap technology that's been massively superseded and is glaringly, obviously filmed on a stage. Now, if you can't see that, and you want to tell us that there's first-hand testimony from a sky vacuum and footage of models, then you can believe all this all you like. But it really isn't an event. The conspiracy is a real event. No. It's just men lying to you, and you've bought it hook, line, and sinker, and now want to turn the conspiracy of the non-event, because it must be real, into an event. Okay.
So if you deny that the moon landing happened, you're not simply denying that a thing happened. You are asserting some other thing that you say happened instead of the thing that we all think happened.
It was his knuckle dragger.
What did I just hear?
Just the ramblings of an incoherent, delusional, zealot bull believer. That's what you just heard.
Staging the moon landing and all of that, right?
Staging? I wonder where you got that word from.
There was a thing that they did.
There was like a stage with men on it, like staging it. Yeah, there was.
And yet, this to me, I think is really kind of decisive in this argument. None of the skeptics have ever presented a single shred of evidence of that event occurring.
So what he wants is evidence of the fraud. What he wants is man in 1969 with a old-fashioned style camera hidden in a giant box filming Kubrick making the moon landing with a load of sand being spread out by men. Now he's saying there's no evidence that any skeptic has presented showing them faking it. Because in his mind, that's what you need. Okay, well, we don't need that, do we? I only have to have a look at the footage, having gone to performing arts school and learn how to use some of the techniques and painted a few backdrops to go, that's a backdrop, that's a stage, these are models, it's all fake. That's all I needed.
Actually, there is evidence or footage of them faking it in the movie. I think Thunderball. He runs through the stage set of the moon landing.
Yeah, in the plot, he runs through them. In the plot of the movie, they're faking the moon landing, and he happens to stumble across them faking the moon landing in the plot of the movie.
That doesn't count?
No.
So you're chasing down his flack?
I've been dealing with this from the panel all day. Yeah, chasing after Sky Vacuum rockets working in them and Van Allen belts in the case of Joe Rogan.
To be very clear about this.
Well, go on. What are they?
Flannel guy.
Say that again.
Flannel guy.
To look at the evidence of the moon landing and to pick it apart and say, well, this evidence isn't compelling enough. That is not evidence of the hoax. That is, at best.
I mean, yeah, I would agree with you in a way. If you wanted to say to me 10 years ago, when I applied the standard I applied 2 minutes ago, oh, look, it's obviously fake. Here's a model. Look, it's obviously fake. Here's a backdrop. Yeah, I would agree. That's not a good enough standard. Now, gas filling space, laws of nature. Now, there's a standard, right? Yeah, your belief in a sky vacuum to traverse to land on the moon violates a natural law. Now, there's a standard for you. Much better than pointing out the stop motion animation and Thunderbirds-esque modelling. No, that's a rubbish standard. I would agree.
At best, you are succeeding in calling into question some of the evidence of this other event, which I don't think you succeed even in doing that. And now there's police cars going by. Maybe they're going after someone who just probably made a deceptive meme, probably. Maybe they're coming for me right now.
So now he's rationalizing the people who have said that it's fake in terms of their reasoning and motivation. I think this is to avoid introspection.
Okay, good. I don't want to cut any of this out. I want to keep all this in. This is what's wonderful about doing a podcast in a hotel room, pointing to weaknesses in the evidence of the moon landing hoax, which I don't think that the skeptics do succeed in that.
Yeah, you already said that.
You still have not provided.
Maybe we'll get this 3 times. Maybe 4's the magic number for this repetition.
Positive, affirmative evidence of the event that you are asserting happened instead.
What, the event of the fakery? We have to prove the fakery of the event. No. Your decision that this is the standard that we must have adhered to for you to believe that there was fakery, and the lack of evidence is an argument from silence fallacy. Nobody has provided a debunking of the claim to be evidence that I hold to be true. Therefore, it is still true. That's an argument from silence fallacy.
And so you've got
Nathan.
Yes.
Just real quick. I was gonna say, the more that he continues to say evidence, it just gives me the Operation Mockingbird vibes, where they've concluded that the more you hear them say it, that the more you'll believe what they're saying. And as long as you hear it enough times and repetition, you're going to then leave this interview, conversation, podcast saying, oh yeah, there's plenty of evidence, and they don't have evidence against it. So it's like literally he's just like brainwashing his audience with repetition, which is like pretty much what they do. So and he doesn't know the difference between a fire truck and a cop car. Go ahead.
It's like a judge in a courtroom, and defendant gets up to give his claims of innocence, and he says, whoa, 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 you cannot give your claims of evidence, sir, that you're innocent until such time as you provided a suitable replacement for the crime.
And furthermore, I've seen no attempts for you to demonstrate how the crime would have had to have been committed according to you. You've provided nothing of the sort. And until such time as you do, I don't see it as reasonable as to accept your claim that what I accept as true could it be in any way fraudulent or fake, because you've not shown me demonstrable evidence of it being faked. So I dismiss you out of hand.
What a moron. Is this he's an adult?
He is an adult.
Where'd you get your logic from? Oh, by the way, your junior high school physics teacher is on the horn desperately trying to say second law of thermodynamics, flannel guy.
You've got this event over here where there's a whole bunch of evidence. Okay. And then you got your event that you claim happened. You zero evidence. None.
He stutters over your event that you claim happened because he's invented a straw man idea of a debunking claim and presentation that doesn't exist by argument from silence. So as he presents this convoluted straw man position he expects the opponent to hold, he's stuttering over it because he realizes how unreasonable it is to insert this insane position on his opponent. Who's off mute?
That was me. I was just, yeah, what's up, Huey? How you doing, brother?
No, he's tattling on you.
Like, he just doesn't realize the irony of him continuing to say there's no evidence of the hoax when literally the evidence that he thinks is evidence for the proof for what he's claiming is the evidence of the hoax.
Yeah, he's taking the burden away.
This guy's pretty smart.
He's taking the burden away from the evidence itself. The evidence, as far as he is concerned, as he disclaimed at the beginning of this, goes without question, goes without saying it did happen. There is no alternative. Therefore, the alternative is you coming up with this unreasonable standard of showing me proof that a hoax took place. You're like, okay, so that's the standard that you've invented, is it? So if we just present what you present as your evidence in the affirmative as the positive claimant that this did happen, you wouldn't be in any way reasonably expected to justify that evidence at all, really. We have to take it as read, and the standard that we have to adhere to isn't taking apart the evidence that you won't stand by or present as your evidence. It's the evidence that we haven't got. I mean, yeah, you're right. I didn't stand next to Kubrick with a film camera and a box brownie getting the evidence of them faking it. Therefore, there is no such evidence, and that means the default position you took at the start of this is ultimately true. It did definitely happen. There's no question of that. It couldn't be questioned. So I'll invent a straw man for my opponent and stutter over it as I reiterate it. You haven't provided this event. What event? The event of them faking it. That's an event that I've got to provide. Yeah, because this is your burden. The burden of the event of it being faking. That's your flat earth standard you must adhere to. Perfectly reasonable. Me? I don't have to justify my standard. It's not like I'm in the positive position to claim that this happened. I wholly believe it. Why would I ever be expected to prove it? This is your burden.
This is one of the reasons why
Nathan.
sometimes.
Chocolate, then angels.
Now, I was just going to say, sometimes this is one of the reasons why there are certain people I don't like hearing delve into this subject, because I just listened to an interview with this Matt Walsh guy like a couple days ago. It was like an hour long. And it was great. The guy was on point. Everything he said made sense. Everything was cool. Then you get to this subject, and then he starts it off with something like, oh, I can't believe that they would actually fake it as opposed to actually make actually going. Like, are you serious? How do people come to that conclusion? You've never seen a movie before? Like, what the hell? I don't get it, man. It's sad.
I'll tell you why. It's fanatical religious zealotry. Anytime you get people into their religion, into that subject, you can tell right away it's a religion because they babble on, ramble on incoherently. That's why.
Babylon?
Yes.
Babylon.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I dropped it to Master B. I got off the NASA's website, the Artemis mission, and I put it into Photoshop and upped the exposure, and there's a Photoshop box around the moon.
Back to 2015 again. Thanks.
We noticed that in 2015. No offense.
Ah, dang it, you guys.
And that you think is new is not. That's the best way to go about it.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, you're right. It is like rolling the time back to 2015, but by the same token, this, when it woke certain people up to the subject, didn't wake anybody up to anything. You know, okay, so there's a potential that they're faking space. So space is real. They're just faking pictures of it. So space is real. It's just the moon landing that wasn't real. Space is real. It's just they couldn't go through the Van Allen belt. It's like, no. The gas we're breathing would fill the space if space was real. That's our current argument. That's it.
End of.
Go on.
End of.
Yeah, end of. Exactly. That's it. That's the end of the discussion. We very rarely cover stuff like this. You don't often see us showing Thunderbirds Argo, men traversing sky vacuums, pictures of men dropping stuff while they're claimed to be in zero G. We don't cover any of that crap here. Why? The argument ends with entropic law. Gas fills space. So sky isn't what they call space. Outer space, a sky vacuum. It isn't that. It would be an area the gas we're breathing would fill. Bye-bye sky vacuum and everything claimed to have come from it, including but not limited to pictures from space, trips to the moon, trips to Mars, orbital motion, ISS. Anything that's claimed to be in the sky vacuum is automatically fake.
Yep. But
now,
you're getting
what
it wrong.
were the evidence of...
Well, here we go. I'm getting what wrong?
NASA's the only part of government that doesn't lie.
of the moon landing hoax be? Okay, not evidence that the evidence of the moon landing is not good. I'm not talking about that evidence. What kind of evidence could you possibly present to prove that this hoax happened?
Second law of thermodynamics, entropic law, gas dispersion. The area that you claim to believe they have traversed would be an area the gas you are breathing would fill.
And, well, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of up to you. That's your burden of proof, not mine.
Called it. Told you. Doesn't want it to be his burden. He's got a positive claim. His claim is the sky is a vacuum, men travelled through it and landed on the moon. He doesn't want to satisfy that burden. Presumably because he's not stupid enough to realise that he's incapable of doing so. Oh, it's not your burden, is it not? Yeah, it is. It's your positive claim. Try that on me. Oh, what? It's my burden? What did I claim about the sky there, Matt? Please give me my quote verbatim. What was my claim again? Oh, there's just your fundamentalist religious zealot belief that it's a vacuum with men flying around in it. Yes, definitely your positive claim there, Matt, that you believe in. I have no burden here. I make no claims about the sky. What I know and will declare boldly and with as much gusto as I can manage with QE on the panel, there must be containment for us to be breathing gas pressure.
He's also invoking two logical fallacies: shifting of the burden of proof fallacy and proving non-existence. Good job, flannel guy.
Yeah.
But even something like somebody who was involved in it blowing the whistle, somebody coming out and saying, hey, I was there when this hoax happened, or even
Buzz Aldrin, we didn't go.
Thank you. I was going to.
We didn't go, end quote.
It could have been scary.
Yeah, we didn't go, end quote, Buzz Aldrin. There you go. Someone who was involved in the hoax lied about it for the majority of his natural-born life and then declared towards his end of life years that we didn't go. What more could you ask for? Where didn't he go?
Why did you
to a sky vacuum?
Sorry.
Good.
I was going to say, Bart Sabrell, why did you swear on the Bible that you went to the moon?
But why doesn't the people who know what happened to JFK come out and just say it now? What's the problem? If something actually happened to JFK, then someone would have said it.
It's an argument from silence fallacy too, by the way.
I actually looked
so
into
there's
this.
three fallacies being played with here.
Turns out JFK actually never died, and there's you may have heard of this person, right? There's a new person that just played him the whole time since. So they basically substituted who was playing JFK so he could go off and have a life on the Barbados Islands. And this guy called Will Smith started playing the same character.
What? Sorry,
even
I'm out of the
I
loop.
talked to the guy who was there when it happened. Now that would not be good evidence. That'd be still pretty weak. If all you could do is say, well, yeah, I talked to a guy who was there, or I talked to a guy who talked to a guy. But we don't even have that. And we certainly don't have any firsthand eyewitness testimony.
He's talking about first-hand eyewitness testimony for his argument from silence.
Well, what about if I talked to a guy who said he was the first an eyewitness, but he just said that's no good?
No, he's talking about eyewitnesses for the hoax occurring. The arbitrary standard he's put on, he's saying there's no witnesses for that.
Eyewitness testimony is evidence.
Yeah, you're obviously not keeping up with this. No, you caught it. You said he shifted the burden. But now in terms of the justification, it's on the shift of burden that he's putting that burden when he says there's no witnesses. Yeah? Make sense?
So we have no witnesses for the non-existence of something.
Exactly. You don't have any witnesses for the non-existence of the hoax being filmed or captured, or an eyewitness to it being filmed or captured. You don't have any witnesses for that. That's his argument, yeah.
He needs to be institutionalized.
It's not proof. It's not proof, but that is evidence. It's just like it's evidence in a crime. Eyewitness testimony can be wrong. We know that, but it's evidence.
Yeah, he doesn't know what evidence is. I did cover it earlier, but yes, you can repeat it.
Evidence is proof. Proof is evidence by definition. So sorry about that. I didn't hear you.
No, that's fine. It's worth reiterating. He used the word again, but then said, correct me if I'm wrong, there isn't evidence, but there is proof, or there is proof, but there isn't evidence, or something like that. Like, no. The two are not just synonymous. They're one and the same thing. Evidence is proof.
Yep. Shout out to Anthony.
Evidence. I mean, you certainly, if a prosecutor has eyewitness testimony that somebody killed a guy, you're going to bring that person in and they're going to testify in court. Of course they are, because it's evidence. If it's the only evidence you have, it's probably not going to be enough.
No. It's only evidence if it proves something. That's what proof is. So in the same way as it could be assumed that if someone says they witnessed the murder, that they are telling the truth, but they might not be. You know, that's why testimony can be unreliable. Well, then you could say it's not necessarily the highest standard of evidence. Well, what does that mean? It means it's not the highest standard of proof.
But he's after just see. This is what it's not only a reversal of the burden of proof that he's given. He's also stating what evidence he's looking for, as he's calling it, right, which is eyewitness testimony, and then stating more or less in the same sentence that that's not even any good. So he's given you the standard that you're supposed to come at him with to within his burden of proof reversal fallacy, and then telling you that that standard is no good.
Yes.
You know, so essentially hand waving away the whole lot.
Yeah, again, I feel that that's kind of projection. So in his mind, he's justifying that the weak-ass testimony of the astronauts isn't going to be good enough. So therefore, when he flips the burden and tells you what standards will or won't be acceptable, he appreciates where his standards, having flipped the burden, wouldn't be acceptable, and is then projecting it onto his opponent. This is his stream of consciousness. There is no opponent in the room for him to bounce off. So these are his thoughts and his feelings on what is and is not reasonable in this context. There's no other opponent. We can point out the flipping of burden onto an imaginary opponent. And in this case, he's got an imaginary opponent to bounce off in the form of a former interview with Joe Rogan. But Joe Rogan's not there. It's just him, isn't it?
But if it goes along with other pieces of evidence, then you got a pretty strong case. Well, over here, there's no physical evidence of any kind of this hoax happening. You know, no one's ever found whatever the site where they've staged the moon landing or something. That's never happened.
Basically that has happened. You know what I mean? They've basically found where these things happened. Right? They've basically found locations that match them exactly. But who cares?
Oh, well, let's just do what he did. There's absolutely loads of evidence of the staging and the staged. It's right there in the footage. It's absolutely amazing evidence. It's amazing, incredible, fantastic evidence. I mean, it's totally surplus to requirements. Gas fills space. The entire area that they're claiming to be in when they film this stuff on stages violates natural law. So this is superfluous, regardless of there being a mountain of evidence that they staged it, to use your word.
But you also don't even have the eyewitness testimony. And that's kind of what I was getting at with Joe also, that you're not only asserting this event, but you're asserting a conspiracy where everybody that involved, hundreds of people probably, I mean, there's hundreds of people who were involved in the conspiracy and or would have to have direct knowledge of it.
Do we have to deal with this? My God.
Nah, just bypass it.
Right, in order for this to happen. And yet, we've heard nothing from any of them. Decades and decades have passed.
Go on.
Any of who? We've heard nothing from any of them. Who's them? The non-existent ones.
No,
clown.
This is an appeal to everybody within NASA would have to know that they're lying. Therefore, why haven't we heard from any whistleblowers? There'd be hundreds of them.
No, I'm just dealing with his statement. Don't say no, it's a yes.
And so you've got all these people who work together on this conspiracy, all these people who have knowledge of it. None of them have said a word, not one word ever.
Hold it.
Argument from silence fallacy.
Precisely. Argument from silence fallacy.
That's pretty incredible. And I say incredible in the most literal sense. It's just very hard to believe. So
literally, right?
I still stand there. I'm still a full-time, full-on moon landing believer, but I did enjoy the conversation.
Is he going to celebrate the entire logical fallacy catalog or just major chunks of it?
When he said, I'm a full-on, I was waiting for you to say it. I'm full-on idiot. Was there something else?
Okay, please let Matt Walsh know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with a polite comment that hopefully won't get immediately be removed by him or YouTube, and just allude to the fact that we have covered his video and given him the evidence that he said he'd never been presented with. So in his video, he said, nobody's ever come to me with evidence that would debunk the moon landing. Well, your positive claim that it is, and you would have the burden of proving, is debunked by natural law. Second law of thermodynamics specifically. Entropic law. Dispersion of gas into areas of volume in this instance. The area of volume being the area that you think they traversed to arrive on a rock in said vacuum. They didn't. Gas fills space. It's a law of nature. Please let him know there is a link to his video going by in the live stream chat right now. Well over 100 people watching. Please let him know. The idea being that if he were to respond, he would put a link to my video, offering up some YouTube algorithmic love where we as flat earthers with the religious zealotry that Matt has demonstrated in his video would preclude us from getting any YouTube love. So hopefully he'd put a link to my video if he were to respond. But thank you very much to Matt. I enjoyed covering that, and he doesn't seem like every other numpty. He didn't frustrate me like all the other numpties do. I can reason why he's got the beliefs, and you've justified it. Like you say, it's just zealotry. I'm not going to defend his zealotry, but you can explain it. And he's not becoming irate, aggressive. He's not ad-homing flat earthers. He's discussing it in a context where it's about Joe. So it was nice to respond to that. I quite enjoyed that. That's me inviting you to comment also. Bloody hellfire.
He was fighting with his cognitive dissonance the whole time. That's who he was arguing with.
Yeah,
his argument was with himself.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I said it was a stream of consciousness. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I'm just saying, his argument was with himself. That's who he was. His main problem was with himself. It's like he can't handle that he could be duped that easily and that big. He can't take that. That's the problem. He can't take it. It's not whether it could happen. It's that he can't imagine how it could happen to him personally. That's where his problem is. I'm sorry, Matt. Absolutely, it could and did happen.
By did happen, you mean the faking of it happened? You're abiding by your standards.
Yeah, it absolutely happened. There was a faking event happened.
Yes.
That did happen. He was duped. End of story.
Yeah, it goes without saying that it happened when you appreciate that there is no sky vacuum. Any other comments? No?
Yeah, I have something to say to Sensual Goat. Sorry.
Hey, Nathan. Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Azam.
Yeah. So I have heard many flat earthers saying that the horizon rises to the eye level. Is this statement correct?
No.
If not, please.
No.
Okay. Thank you so much.
The correct statement would be the horizon appears to rise to eye level. However, the horizon is the apparent location where the ground meets the sky, or the sea meets the sky. The sea, if you raise an altitude, or the ground, if you raise an altitude, is below you. Therefore, there is a dip as you raise an altitude to the horizon, formed with the ground below you.
You sound like a computer. Why would it rise?
More of the
why would it rise?
More of the land if we rise above the ground.
Oh my god, you've just caused audio chaos with that, QE, telling me I sound like a computer as I'm measured with somebody who speaks with a very different accent.
So why would it rise anyway? At all? That's my question.
Yeah, why would it rise on the globe?
Any answer? I guess not. Carry on.
Because the Earth is a flat plane, that's why. And not a globe.
Yeah. And the horizon's apparent, not geometric.
There is a geometric horizon in the globetards fantasy, but my question still stands.
Yeah.
Why would the horizon appear to rise at all on a globetard?
It can't. That's the point. That's what switched me within 8 seconds. Because the horizon always does appear to rise to eye level. It doesn't actually, but it appears to do so. It can't even appear to do so on a globe. Can't do that. It's impossible. It has to go down consistently. It can stretch further from you, but that further must be a consistent down.
Well, it's literally part of their rhetoric to state that it does fall away at 8 inches per mile squared or 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. It is their literal rhetoric to say that it falls away. So to state in any way, shape or form that the horizon appears to rise as you rise defies a bull fundamentally.
Yeah, so it's funny though, because...
Hold on a second, Angels. Was there anything else, Azam? Azam, was there anything else? It was his question, that's why I'm asking him. No, clearly not. Go ahead, Angels.
I was just going to say, according to their model, the further out you look over the Earth, the more the Stilly Globe model in their rhetoric, right? The further out you look, the more the Earth...
No, we have to stop at model. You have to show that model to which they are referencing first.
Yeah, so the horizon would dip down and away, right?
I guess that's a no.
So in the globe maths,
I don't know what to say.
You're not just not picking up on what he's critiquing you. I'm under the same knife currently. So when you say model, what model? There isn't one. When you then refer to the horizon in terms of how it should fall away, that's horizon in the globe maths. So it's very specific in this instance to globe maths.
Yeah. So in the globe math, it should, the further you look out into the horizon, it should dip down and away from you, except the horizon raises towards eye level, right?
Appears.
The problem is, appears to. So we zoom in with cameras like my P1000, I've done it myself, and the boat reappears, and also I happen to catch a buoy in front of the boat, right? Now, because of perspective, how it actually works, the buoy appears lower than the boat in the distance, right? It's just perspective. So what they're telling me, I'm zooming in on a horizon that keeps ramping up higher. It's meant to be the opposite in their model.
Yes.
What model?
Okay.
Dang it.
Angels, are you aware of the Black Swan argument?
Yeah.
How does the Black
I
Swan
use it all the time.
This Black Swan argument renders all of this redundant.
Yeah. Basically, the horizon is an apparent location. Boats don't go over a physical geometric curvature.
Yeah, if the horizon's a hill, the hill is in a fixed location. The hill that they say isn't in the fixed location it needs to be in if it's a hill. That's the Black Swan argument.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. That you don't.
Plus, if a globe.
Hold on, just one
Sorry,
second.
Nathan.
Hold on. Right. So, okay. So further to that, right. Once we demolish that the horizon, as claimed by globe Earth believers to be a hill, is not a hill, called Earth curve. At that point, why do I have to explain what boats do at the horizon?
Well, you don't.
No, I don't.
But at that point, you have to pretty much welcome to flat Earth, right?
Yeah, I've got to draw a line. I'm not decrying this information, right? Every time I decry it, I shout out the fact that I can only decry it because I understand it. So I have to strike a balance between letting you understand that it's a worthy endeavour, but once you appreciate that the horizon is not Earth curve, it does ultimately become a folly. You don't need to know about what would be accurately described as the optical dissolution point, otherwise known as the horizon. There is no need for that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can make ourselves seem smart, and at a point it felt like it was necessary to explain what the horizon was because it had a positive claim from the ballers attached that it was Earth curve. Now, I'm not decrying that education to anybody who wants to attain it, but if you, prior to acquiring it, just knew that the Earth curve claim was false, would you then say to yourself, you know what, I really would love to know what the horizon actually is then? Then fair enough, good for you. But it really doesn't actually serve that much practical purpose. That's what Brian and I were discussing right at the beginning of this show. I don't know if you were around.
I didn't say that, no.
That's all right. I'm going to round out shortly anyway. So with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming Streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, hit me up on PayPal and Patreon and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.